She's taking over, great. No, we're calling her to order. I think we've got two people that aren't going to come anyway, so we need to have them excused. So call to order, and Yubi and Kelly won't be here. Molly moves to excuse them. All in favor? Okay. Minutes from July the 5th. I'll try to find my MPC agenda instead of council. Thank you. You moving the minutes, Wayne? Wayne moves. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's passed. Any post-agenda items? Seeing none, can we have acceptance of the adoption of the agenda? Alan moves adoption. All in favor? Okay. That brings us to development permits, and it has been tabled from last week, so we need a motion to move it off the table. Anne-Marie? Lift it. Lift it. Okay. Oh, okay. All in favor? Okay. Take it away.
So this application just really needs approval by MPC. We have received no further information about it, so it's basically the same as it was at the last meeting. So again, we recommend approval with the conditions that are listed in the report.
Okay. Yes. Tracy.
I'd like to make that motion to approve with conditions presented.
Okay. Tracy moves with conditions that are in our motion. Any other questions? All in favor? Okay. It's done. And then on to the next one.
I need to get to the next one. The next one is development permit 2018-057 from Brooks Farm Equipment. The application is to approve the as-built building and construction of an addition and the operation of an existing farm machinery sales, rental, and service company. It also includes outdoor storage. It's on the north outskirts of the city of Brooks. In the rural business district, this type of company is a permitted use. An addition is permitted as well. The issue is that the applicant is requesting the addition on the west side of the building and so requires a variance to the 100-foot setback from the Range Road 14.5. So this request is for as-built of the building and then the addition with variance to the side yard setback requirement. In the circulations, there were no issues or concerns from staff. It was taken to IMDP where they recommended approval, and there were no responses from adjacent landowners. So the recommendation from staff is to approve development permit 2018-057 with the conditions listed in the report.
Okay, any questions? Ready to move? Alan? All in favor? Done. Any other business? Proposed amendments to land use bylaw? Diane?
Great. This is from conversations we had last meeting, which talked about proposed cannabis regulations for the retail sale, as well as adjusting our current licensed medical marijuana production facility and turning them into just cannabis production facilities. So it didn't matter if it was for medical or for recreational use. So again, I proposed some new definitions, some definitions that would need to be amended, and then the removal of the one for licensed medical marijuana. Again, adding retail cannabis stores, discretionary use in hamlet business, rural business, and then also adding it as a discretionary use in rural industrial, We also don't have any retail in rural industrial, so it might be a good time to add that as discretionary use as well, just to do a little housekeeping at this time. So Section 26 is proposed to be added to the land use bylaw and use-specific standards. I'd like to draw your attention to probably 26.4, which is perhaps open for some conversation or debate. Those are the setbacks being proposed by some of the municipalities, Lethbridge County, County of Warner, MD Tabor, those types of things. So it's a combination of the top two, so boundary of a parcel of land in which a provincial healthcare facility is located, boundary of a parcel in which school is located, and then D, which is the boundary of a parcel of land designated school reserve or municipal school reserve. Those are the three that are required setbacks under the new cannabis legislation. Some municipalities have been adding anywhere where there's children. So again, approved childcare, daycare facilities, parks or playgrounds that have been done on things not municipal school or school reserves. So sometimes it's on common property in a condo association or those types of things. So again, just taking that into account. And then this is another one, which is church, community center, library, recreational facility. So again, the first three I talked about, A, B, and D, are ones that you should deal with because the province has indicated. Other municipalities have also included these. So again, you can include them, not include them, change the 100 meters to something else. So those are things that are within the municipal purview with regards to setbacks. The other thing is the next one, which is 26.5, and some municipalities have been doing this as well, is putting in a specific, exemption to the waiver power of MPC and the SDAB, those particular setbacks cannot be reduced. So upon appeal. So again, it kind of ties the hands. It's saying that you're very specific about these setbacks and we want them to be maintained. Other ones are saying, well, if it was, 95 meters instead of the 100 meters, is that good enough? So again, it reduces that waiver power. So that's something that I wanted to have MPC think about what powers you would like, what powers you would like the SDAB to have, and then again, when you put your council hat on, have that discussion on whether or not that's reasonable. The other one that is an inclusion, and again, that's open for discussion. I've just brought this forward because it seemed to be sort of the average time frame that there's maximum hours that municipalities have been included, which is 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Again, that can be whichever. Under the current AGLC, they're the same as liquor stores. They can stay open until 2 o'clock in the morning. So again, a lot of municipalities felt they didn't want to allow for that length of time, but again, it's up to council and to MPC as to where you'd like to go with this particular one. Signage is as required under the AGLC requirements and under our sign bylaw. Parking is as per most retail uses that we allow in our land use bylaw. And that's about it on that one. Our medical marijuana production facility or licensed medical marijuana, there's a little section on saying we'll make all those amendments as per required depending on where they're located in our land use bylaw. I don't know if you want to go through all of them or if you want to stop and have a discussion on retail cannabis.
When it comes to the retail part of it, I'm trying to understand a little bit more about how this aligns with perhaps provincial or federal regulations. Is there rules behind co-locating with another with alcohol distribution? And that's why I was looking at your times, and that's your times that you recommend for opening, and whether there was an ability to, in my mind, keep that more uniform, because they're both controlled, right?
Correct. And co-locating is not an option. For cannabis retail stores under current AGLC legislation, they are standalone. They can have no other affiliated business with it. So you can't have liquor and cannabis in the same. You can't have, I think one of the ones we were laughing at in Nanton, well, I've got my antique store, can I have my cannabis in the corner? No. You have to have a separate cannabis location that has no access from any other business. So with regard to that, it truly is standalone, so the hours of operation would be, I guess, just to that particular store or that type of store.
I guess I just question why wouldn't we keep it the same as Alberta Gaming Liquor for liquor sales, and instead of having a different time frame? To me, if it's regulated. And then the other thing too in my mind was a question about what the rest of the municipalities are going to do. And I think that's something that we should standardize across our region.
That's been an interesting one, because I know that seems to be the case where a lot of municipalities in certain regions do want to standardize. But we found that everybody is kind of doing their own thing. Same, for example, they were laughing, they'll use the Nanton example as again. So they call it the Highway 2 corridor, so it's Nanton, Claresholm, Fort Macleod, and they thought, well, they're half an hour apart, so are they going to drive from Nanton to, so they can get their buzz all the way along? I don't know. Nanton decided they wanted to stay open till 2. Fort Macleod, which is a little bit more conservative, said that's not part of our community standard, so they wanted them shut at 10. So again, I think it is what you as the community would like to see. Again, I think that there's probably not going to be a big run on cannabis retail stores within the County of Newell come October 17th, to be perfectly honest, because again, they're going to be limited to your hamlets and to any rural business or rural industrial site at this point. I think you need to have, as anything, I don't know how many liquor stores we have in our hamlets, so how many businesses you need that population to be able to sustain a retail type business. And so in that case, I don't know if these particular limitations on hours are going to be that critical at this point. Again, the only thing that isn't waivable out of these would be the setbacks. So if they came in and said, I really want to be open till 2 o'clock in the morning, that is something that MPC could look at. It's still going to be discretionary use. It's still going to be coming to this board for a deliberation and determination of appropriateness. So again, those can all be dealt with at that time. The only thing as written would be those setbacks. And again, if they couldn't meet the setbacks, they can still come before us, but it would be very hard for them to get an approval. Our suggestion would be, as we're vetting it at the administrative level, we'd be telling them that we need to find another location that would meet these requirements before you even got into the process, because you're not going to be very successful in getting a permit. So again, the locational issues seem to be one of the things that municipalities are most focused on, and some of those others are just kind of peripherals. So again, you can include it, you can throw it out. This is your section of your land use bylaw, so it can include whatever you want. If you want to strip it right down and just have the requirements for the application and the setbacks and let everything else follow provincial legislation, you can do that as well.
So Diane, what are you saying? So the 100-meter setbacks, it says here on 26.5, the distances are not eligible to be varied or waived. So we don't need that in there, or do we, according to the province?
The province, if you have nothing at all in your bylaw, if you're silent on it, you would fall back to the provincial regulations that say 100 meters from those 3 things. Again, there's some discussion on whether or not you can waive that provincial policy. They say if you wish to have waiver power of those provincial policies, you should put them into your own land use bylaws and determine. So you could actually only say 25 meters if you chose as a municipality, but it has to be done by bylaw in the legislative process municipally. So A lot of the municipalities right now, so that I've looked at what's been being put out there, a lot of them are saying, to begin with, we do not want to allow that 100 meters to be waived. We will review and look and see how things are moving afterwards. They're not sure how many of these are going to go to appeal. They don't know. So they kind of wanted to say whatever council had determined they wanted to move forward with setbacks, they wanted them set, at least in an interim. So that's why they've started putting this particular clause into the land use bylaws. Again, if you look at it, the way that our land use bylaw is set up, we are allowing any development officer a 10% waiver, and then MPC has complete waiver power, and SDAB has complete waiver power. They could waive it down to 0 if they wanted to. Again, so it depends on what level of control council wants to have on this.
And if I may just respond to that, but they also, if we say that you're not eligible for a waiver, then they can't appeal it either with the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. So MPC wouldn't have, let's say it's only 25 meters different, I'm saying, so we still don't have that authority then to waive that if we put it in.
Correct, and again, those are the two hats we always talk about. So again, while we're talking about this at MPC, and it's what, as this board, when you sit as MPC, what you want to do, the policy discussion is going to be at council's level. So then you have to look at what you want MPC to do and what you want the SDAB to do, because both will be bound by this. So, but if you think everybody can waive and make decisions based on the information brought in, then we can remove that. So again, I wanted it in there. It's always easier to put stuff in, have the discussion and remove it, or leave it in than to come up with verbiage. So again, this is what I've been looking at with the rest of the rules, and this seems to be a pretty standard clause that they're putting in. So I brought it forward for you to consider.
Okay, Lionel?
Well, we've talked about land use bylaws many times in the past, and the subject about how onerous they are has come up many times. And so in my mind, the more of these little conditions we put in, the more difficult it's going to get. So the hours of operation, why not just leave it all the rest of it with the provincial regulations, and don't put special hours in and special conditions. I really think we're just making it more complicated than it is. It wasn't maybe our choice personally to legalize it, but it's been decided that that's what the direction the country's going to go. And so we're going to be scared of this thing and try to put conditions in people's road. I don't agree with that. I think we should just go by the provincial guidelines and leave it at that.
I agree with Lionel. 3 things that I thought shouldn't be in there, and the hours is one of them. The 100 feet, whether you can, if you can waive 5 feet, who cares? If it's that close, to me it wasn't a big deal. And the third one was 26.9, where you talk about you have to listen to people that don't like, or did I put that? Input from people, and I thought, well, we do that anyway. You don't want to put extra emphasis on, you have the right to disagree with the decision, because we do that anyway.
Other comments?
I have a question.
Question?
Joint services, was there not a bit of a hope that we could, within the Newell boundaries, have similar regulations at one point in time? And I missed the last meeting, so.
Yeah, they did talk about that. I think it was Jackie from Sano, or one of them brought it up at Joint Services to say that they wanted the discussion about it, and that we could unite as a
and
region.
I think the city was quite interested too, because that's where, chances are most of the places will pick, I would think.
Anything further? Diane?
So I think what I'm hearing is pare it down before I bring the full one back.
I kind of think, I mean, we don't have much for smoking rules, but we have some of those, and I think those should be followed and keep the others a lot similar to alcohol and whatever the government says over and above. Let's do it, and from there, we'll feel our way through it, I guess. That's
Simple.
I guess one quick question that Alice just mentioned again, when it comes to the setbacks, you want to go with just the 3 provincial ones and no church setback, no daycare setback, no library setback. So again, it's an interesting balance, and again, that's what I always challenge the councils to do too, because you're going to have a segment of the population that just really doesn't want this either. So you're needing to balance the open free market capitalism, freewheeling, let anything happen, with the requirement of community standards and what people are expecting. So again, I just caution you about that as well. This is something that's brand new. You don't know what it is. It's always easier, again, to put a little more rule up front and ease off on it than try to put it in after you've been freewheeling. So conversation on that, and then I'll bring the stuff back for first reading and we can hack and slash at that point. But I do think you're going to have, I mean, in many municipalities, you've heard that we had almost a riot in Lethbridge Council chambers with the church groups, that they wanted to have that 100-meter setback from them. So again, you don't know what you're going to get until you have the public hearing, and that's one of the things that consideration needs to be taken. So again, it's just trying to balance things out, not being too restrictive, I get that, but also understanding that there's also another side to this, and that's why I think municipalities are taking a more cautious view of it. But again, it's your bylaw. You do whatever you would like to do.
I think we're also still, we don't want to be right offside with our neighbors either, so I think that discussion has to take place. So maybe don't get in too big a hurry to spend a whole bunch of time on this.
I think what's an interesting one too is that if someone wants to set up shop in Bassano because they want to set up shop in Bassano because they think there's a market there, it's not going to matter whether or not it's the same rules in Bassano as there is in. That's not going to be what I think determines where they locate. I think they're looking to have market and the profitability of any business. So I don't think what's been proposed here would not be acceptable to someone who was looking to set up a business.
I agree with you. People are going to look at location as location, but I also think there's been the indication that we wanted to keep it standardized across the region. So I'm not saying to take out these restrictions at this point. I just don't think that we can approve it at this point in time until we have discussion with our partners.
Okay. Molly?
Just, and you know, it's interesting, I look at is the item F, as far as the 100 meters, is a municipal edition, correct? And I find that interesting because the provincial ones are about the healthcare facilities and the schools, and a municipal reserve, is that theirs?
Theirs is anything where they consider as an MR parcel or an SR parcel. So if it's designated,
which would be a perfect place for people to hang out and smoke dope. So it's just odd to me. And the church thing is one that will upset people.
I think what's interesting with the AGSC legislation, they are definitely protecting provincial interests. So they're leaving it open to municipalities to protect municipal interests. Mm-hmm. What are important to you? What's important to your community? Where are these things that there would be impact. There may not be this kind of impact in downtown Calgary, but it may be in a smaller community, depending on, again, your community standards and your community values. And that's why many municipalities have been looking at doing those surveys. And I mean, Brooks did do theirs, so I think that that's given us a good idea of how people feel about things. So, again, I think this is uncharted territory. It's kind of like what we're trying to make up with the solar. And, you know, again, things are always amending. That's the next thing is to talk about solar. So to me, we need to probably need to put something in. I think probably putting something in is better than nothing. You're not required to put anything in, then we just fall back to the AGLC legislation. And then if we have people in our community, we have no control because we have no standards and we don't have our own rules over what we would accept or not accept. So again, I think that that's something to think about on how do we deal with something. If someone does complain, say for example, hours of operation, and we don't have at least a minimum that we could establish, it means we can still change it and vary it, but at least we have a minimum in here we can go to. If not, we have nothing. If our bylaw is silent on it, we can't. We have a harder time imposing those hours of operation, I would suggest.
Wayne.
How do liquor stores work for, say, next to a school or a hospital or anything like that? The rules on that, wouldn't that be the same thing?
And again, I'm not up on the Liquor Control Act, to be perfectly honest. But municipalities do, and I said the City of Brooks does have a very stringent set of regulations around their liquor stores and the separation distances between liquor stores, which is why you've been seeing all of the appeals probably in the last 2 years on liquor stores. But again, those are municipal regulations versus non-municipal. So again, I would have to look into if there's those setbacks and those types of things. I'm not positive there are, but again, that's liquor, this is cannabis. We've got to deal with the cannabis.
Do we have, in the county, bylaws restricting where we can put liquor stores in the county?
We have them listed as a use, but we do not have setback distances for anything. And we do not have specific use criteria around them. In the entire time I've been here, I don't think we've ever had a liquor store application. So, again, we may never get a cannabis one either. But
Well, we've had a distillery, and people thought that the kids from the school would be getting into it. You know, I mean...
But again, a production facility is different than an
Well,
absolute
I mean,
liquor store. So yeah, we don't have anything about that either. So you take it one step at a time. So again, don't put anything in. Be silent on it and see where the chips fall. I mean, it's definitely up to it's council's decision. My recommendation is always, regulate and then back off if you don't need it. But it's way harder to bring that cow back in when it's gotten out. So just determine how you want to deal with it. And that's, again, it's definitely a council decision.
So I think that one of the first steps we got to do is the regional type communication about where everybody else is at. The one I am having a little bit of difficulty with is 26.5, because I think when you aren't allowing somebody to, if it's not waivable for that setback, then I'm wondering where some of these could be. I mean, as a county, you're right. In a hamlet, they're probably not even going to be able to do it without the waivable thing. And I guess when I think about the regional type thing, I'm trying to picture one in Bassano. And I mean, there's a church on every corner, and there's halls, there's a golf course, there's a school, there's a hospital. I'm not sure you could find a place that's 300 feet away from one of those things. So by not having it waivable, and if we want to be the first to sort of put our stamp on something, or at least open the discussion, I think that's one that I would like to see that we have some variation on that 100 meters. I think the 100 meters should stay in there, but it should be appealable as far as the distance. So, and I mean, you said yourself, so I'm just feeding off of your information that set the rule, but make it a little bit of flexibility to it. So that's all I'm questioning is, are we allowing enough flexibility on that 100 meters? And I think even if you look at the city of Brooks and if they would to bring that in without the variation of being able to appeal the setbacks, gosh, there's not many places in the city that doesn't have those public type uses, whether it's daycare or the other ones. If they're going to use ours as a template that you can't, that one would be eligible for.
And I mean, I think there's, and again, I guess I'm really struggling between the urban and the rural, because to me, what you do in the city of Brooks, really, I don't know what impact it would have on what we're doing within our hamlets. So again, I'm struggling with that one too on this. I mean, I understand some of the regional idea of making sure we're kind of all on the same page, but everybody's going to be working out of the same playbook. And again, if the city determines they do want to waive or they want to have a setback of 0 because they want to promote cannabis, is that okay with the county? And I don't know if what their decision should have a whole lot of impact. I think it should inform your decision, but I don't know if it should be in complete alignment with, because you're really two different types of municipalities and you've got different things and different types of urban situations you're dealing with. So again, I think what I'm getting is I need direction to go and talk to the other municipalities, see what they're proposing to do. Maybe we have an administrative discussion about it and then bring it back. Again, we've got some time before October to do this, so I suggest that this is maybe a jumping off point and then determine what other people want to do. They all have their own planners too, so again, they've been working through this. So.
Brian?
So with that, I think that's great advice. But I'm curious to see what the legislation or the land use planners, like in a community like Strathcona County, are doing, because not to suggest that we're Strathcona County, but I am, because of the specialized municipality, are they able to deem two different setbacks, or is it uniform? Or I know they have, did you say, Anne-Marie, 70 planners or something like that? 89 planners. So they should be able to help us out with some sort of this.
And I would suggest that, again, you can set within hamlets, you can have a separate setback on, in different, every zone could have different setbacks, and we were doing that with signage. I mean, you can get as crazy as you want to, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So I guess that's the thing, is what I'm going to ask is, if you can think about what the end goal is, what do you want it to look like, then we can write the policies to get there. So if you're good to say, we can have a cannabis store in every single corner, next to parks, next to churches, you could even zero it down next to health. I mean, anything that's here which is interesting, which they said is, as long as you have it in your land use bylaw, you can reduce those required 100 meters to 0 if you want. So the province has given a great deal of latitude to the municipalities in how they want to deal with this based on, again, community values and what do you want to do. So is it a balance between economic development, which some municipalities are saying, we'll take as many of these things as you can get because we want any kind of business. Other ones are saying, we don't want this anywhere in our municipality, so we're going to try to figure out a way to limit this to the bare minimum. They're going zone everybody direct control. So we're not putting anything in, and everyone is based on its own merits coming in location, and council at the time of that decision has put them through a rezoning application, and they set the setbacks based on the location that's been presented. So you can go 5 different ways here. My suggestion is that's a lot of effort and energy. If you want to do that, to me, I guess, put it in, put as a discretionary use, allow them through the process we've already established. They don't have to rezone. They don't have to pay the $800. We don't have to have a public hearing. So again, it depends on what the end goal is. And maybe that's the question I leave MPC with, is what do you want to see? Where do you want to see these things, and how do you want them to get there?
Well, I think, quite frankly, Diane, there's a lot of people that haven't realized there's things you can change and things you can't. And they're trying to change things that have already happened and that they can't. And I think you have to be very conscious of that and not start putting roadblocks in something which is perfectly legal in your country. So, whether you agree with it or not, that's your right. And I guess we're just saying, hey, we'll see where our communities are going to come down and the feedback we get, and we'll act accordingly. If it's harder to do later, so be it. Because right now we don't have a clue.
So I just want to be clear about how MPC would like us to collect this information. Diane is suggesting she can talk to admin from other municipalities. Would you like to see something at joint services, a discussion at joint services with a presentation from what Diane has found, or do you want to just have it on joint services agenda that elected officials would discuss it and then come back to us? Or like, how would you like to see us bring this information to you?
Well, those in joint services, I think that's the first place you're going to have a discussion, just feel everybody out a little bit.
Yeah, and there has been beginning discussions, I think. And it was certainly more of an urban issue, as Diane has pointed out. So I don't think we're meeting again until September. Isn't the August Joint Services cancelled? Yes. So it would be a September agenda by then.
Do we have an IMDP for August, though?
Yes, there's something that has to be, but I don't think there's an actual meeting.
Oh,
We're going to do it as a email discussion.
Yeah. So it's probably going to be too late by then for any sort of formal presentations. I think if there's a way for the communities and their planners to sort of talk and I think the city input would probably be, and as Diane points out, it's quite different from the rural. So, and theirs to me was much more about consumption and where consumption is going to be allowed, I think, compared to the retail sale.
Right, and then there's definitely, and that's Lane's task is to deal with consumption, public consumption and stuff. Again, we're just looking at where these stores can set up. So again, it's a very limited scope on that, and again, it's getting mixed in with the rest of the bigger discussion about that.
Yeah.
Again, I would suggest that probably waiting to the September joint service meeting to have this discussion, if we want to have something in place before October, is going to be cutting things awfully close for all the municipalities involved. I'm not sure what their timelines are, but definitely I can get in contact with them, have an understanding where they're going. Again, look at where they see this, they look and just put in their land use bylaw, they're going to do direct control, some of those bigger items, and then be able to bring something back with some discussion. I still think that, again, each municipality is going to do what their council and their ratepayers are going to want them to do. So while we can take it as information, I think it still has to be, each individual municipality's decision on what they want to put forward.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the other communities. I mean, you can talk this over for another year. I'm actually okay with approving this one, but then a couple of things have to be thrown out. And the three that I mentioned, the hours, the distance, the input from ratepayers, which we do anyway, and then the F, the longer I read that, and I think Patricia, for instance, would be like Bazzano, but we can't control Bazzano. We can only control our own hamlets. Rolling Hills, maybe. Patricia might be a good spot to have one, but the playground is right there. You might have kids under 18, heaven forbid. They're 17 and they're close to where the proposed store is going to be, so maybe leave that one out too.
probably haven't given you a lot of direction at all.
A lot of X's on my paper, so I think I got some direction.
Okay. We'll move on. No post agenda, nothing in camera.
Actually, I have a couple more things to go through, Clarence. I'm
Have I
sorry.
missed something?
On the rest of
Oh,
it, I've
yeah,
got
on the
3 different
law.
points. Yeah, so I've also included from Shanley's discussion last meeting about alternative energy. So we talked about it administratively, and we figured that the easiest and best way to do that was still just move the height of the panels from 8 feet to 15 feet. That would require them to still get a development permit for those that were, say, microgeneration sizes, so that we'd be able to ensure they had electrical permits and the setbacks were correct and those types of things. But again, it wouldn't come before NPC. They would only be coming if they were requiring a setback variance or a bigger height variance than 15 feet, but we figured that this would take care of the concerns immediately to see how this is going to go. So I think that's an easy and quick fix to fix that one problem we're having. The other one that was brought up administratively was, again, our religious assemblies in schools. We didn't really, again, where we talked about not having any specific criteria around liquor stores, well, we didn't have anything for schools or religious assemblies either. So we did do some research in some of the other rural municipalities in the province to see what they were doing, and then we came up with this proposal. So we'd like to switch church to religious assembly, so that'll include mosques and synagogues and all other types of religious assemblies, and then put in some discussion and some criteria in the agricultural district, as well as then sort of anything else. So in a non-agricultural district, 'cause we have it in our hamlets and we have it in some of our other districts. So to kind of be all-encompassing. So again, we put in some sizes. We put in soils analysis for, and again, water and sewer, where that's going to be coming from. Again, an adequate parking, and we said shall be located on a road which is paved or hard surface. So that would be one of the criteria we'd be looking for. As well, then in the non-agriculture, so again with hamlets, so again if it's on a smaller parcel, you know, the side yard setbacks, those types of things, being required to hook onto municipal services if available, those types of things. Sort of also mirrors it with our schools, so we did the same thing. So things that we'd be looking for.
Are there other types of public structures or gatherings that kind of would cause us the same problems, perhaps? Not sure. Not even something like a community hall, or
that's what would come to mind as a community hall, with regards to, again, location, amount of traffic, water and sewer volumes, because again, it would be something not normal of an existing single-family house, so those types of things too. So you could say schools and or community halls if you wanted to, just to say these are some criteria. We could also just put in a separate one for community halls and put the same sort of idea in there as well. I think with community hall, especially in a hamlet, for example, you sometimes get issues with parking. So again, ensuring that there's enough parking on site or close by and to have that discussion. So again, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. But again, it's more rules and regulations. But again, it's not bad.
I guess I'm just, maybe can we maybe use your imagination a little bit? Can we have an all-encompassing type of definition of all those types of things, something that attracts larger numbers of people, something that attracts vehicle traffic, that type of thing? I'm just questioning. I don't have an answer.
We may be able to class it as public gatherings, something or others, and then say these uses would include, and the following criteria would be on the development of a religious assembly, school, community hall, and then list that underneath and only have one section of it, but have a different top discussion, as long as we administratively remember that we need to look at there for the additional criteria. But definitely we can come up with something, I'm sure, that would work amongst us, and we can present that so we're not just putting the same thing in the bylaw 3 times. So,
You know, I think we have to be very careful, but we also have to be, you know, the reasons we're trying to put these types of things into more acceptable areas. And it's not just churches and schools, it's different. It's halls, it's, you know, to draw traffic. Can we kind of direct that a little bit, that's all.
Can we, well, maybe you consider it that we do not allow them in agricultural areas, but that they have to rezone first. Again, it's an extra step, but it's also a little bit more control for us if you ask for rezoning from agriculture to public service or whatever you're built.
that's always a possibility as well, is to remove it out of the ag district, put it in either public institution or public service even, have them do a rezone, list them in that as a district or in the hamlet, because again, it's got servicing, those types of things, and then it would be a rezone requirement. Yeah. So we definitely could come up with that solution if that's where MPC would like to propose it to council.
And I think if we're serious about trying to restrict these places to where there are good roads to get there and good services like potable water hookups and possibly sewer, then that would be a good addition, because it would force people to look more at the most practical place to build in hamlets. So I think that would be a good consideration.
It definitely elevates it to the council level when you talk about directing development, so it makes sense. So that's definitely something we can propose then.
Yes, are we good? That's it on that section, isn't it? Are you good, Dan? You're done. Sorry, I completely forgot about the other parts of it. Okay, then we'll go on to post agenda, which we didn't have in camera. The information items, which I haven't had the time to look at this application. What was that?
This was Mr. Takita down by the Bow River. He was increasing his operation to a different level. I can't remember exactly what it was. It had to do with cattle, and he was increasing the number of cattle. So apparently he's changed his mind.
Pam, anytime you are ready, give me the nod. You're all ready? All right. Okay, well, we'll just roll right into, we're going to move right into our council meeting, so I'll call it to order. Because we do have 11 a.m. delegations, which look as though it could be some time on that.
I'll make a motion to excuse Kelly and Yubi.
Yeah. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And so that takes us to the adoption of the minutes. Brian moves. Date discrepancy on the title of the minutes. June 21st, 2018 should be July 5th, 2018 on top. I always count on somebody reading them. Got that? All right. All in favor of the adoption of minutes with that change? Opposed? Motion is carried. Any post-agenda items? We just have one in camera legal. So can we get an adoption of the agenda? Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Seeing as we're close to delegation time, I'm wondering if, John, would you like to do your report, or do you prefer to have the RCMP? They don't. Oh, okay. You look pretty casual, like you might be on holidays too. Oh, all right. Good one. Item 612, then we'll go to John. Thank you, John. We also have Todd, so we can maybe get through John and get to Todd, because the delegation of 11 might take a while. Okay, time around. So, John.
Good morning. As mentioned, my casual appearance, as I said, is due to days off. So, just to clarify, so I'm doing the report here for April through to June. Our department continues to utilize the provincial traffic safety calendar. The areas of focus that we did were for speed, aggressive drivers, motorbike safety, construction zones, commercial passenger vehicle safety. During this time period, we issued 91 warnings and 51 tickets. Our department as well dealt with 84 incidents during this time period. We did do joint operations. We conducted them with the RCMP, the provincial parks officers, and the Department of Transportation. Our department also, myself, like an Officer Leaks there, attended a threat pattern recognition. It's training that's required by the Solicitor General's Department. So we went and completed and passed that. Our department also was asked by EID to attend to do training on the invasive mussels. So we attended and got information on it, on invasive mussels, basically what can happen with them if they do enter into the aquatic system, and the damage that they can do. We also did, we had several boats that we were asked to do training on inspection, and then they put little fake mussels in to kind of try and spot or whatever to be able to identify them. So it was a very good educational training. So attended that. I also attended myself an incident command system here at the EID here for was a mock scenario on overland flooding, which again was very, very good to see what happens and the manpower that would be required to handle it. So it was again very good training. Myself, I went to Messinat and also attended training on aggressive dog handling techniques. I also attended to Chile for the Hamlet Advisory Committee, AGM, to answer any questions that they may have had for our department. I also attended the Rolling Hills and assisted in a bike rodeo at the school. We did this with the RCMP and the health promotion facilitator. The children were taught bike safety and participated in a course which utilized their bike skills and bike safety awareness. As well, our department also continues to utilize the speed display signs to educate the motorists on their speed and for data collection. And then at the end here enclosed is a report for further information just on the incidents and tickets versus warnings that were issued by our department. That concludes my report.
The overland land flooding intrigues me. What did you learn? Because you never know where the floods are going to be.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think we actually did it around, possibly around the Patricia area, but what was very interesting was how many people you needed personnel to handle it, because it was basically just a flood coming out and how you would deal with it, like with the nearby communities that would be involved. Would you have to set up and gas them to evacuation, and where would you put them? The other really interesting thing I found, being from a rural background, was the livestock, the farm animals. That's a really big component that sometimes gets overlooked, and where that is applicable is where do you put them? Like the thought used to be was cut the barbed wire fence and let them take care of themselves, let them run. Well, they found that method is not working. Like, it's not it doesn't work. They found that the cattle will just herd up and whatever and could drown or fire, whatever the case might be. So from that they discovered that they've got to look at different ways to do it, so you can have people come in and try and move the cattle to a safer spot, using that as an example. So there was, again, a lot of manpower used to that. So stuff like that I found interesting, because even back from a rural background, I know cattle and all that, but I never really thought of it in a emergency situation. So that was interesting. And long story short, what we found is that it takes a lot of people. You're going to have to do mutual aid, and mutual aid is going to be paramount in any sort of disaster that you use, and that was come out really much in the forefront.
Other questions? Ellen?
I'm wondering, John, if you could share one technique how to deal with an aggressive dog.
Well, the one technique...
Besides a bullet?
Being from Roebuck, yeah, home. No, the one technique we found, I would suggest to you, the first thing we were taught is to really look at the animal's mannerism. Like, the big thing with aggressive dogs is that depending on the breed, some will show being aggressive more than others. And the big thing is, as a person, to be aware when you're coming up and you see a dog, don't treat it as that it could possibly be aggressive, I guess would be the first thing I would tell you, right? So don't assume every dog is friendly, even if it isn't displaying aggressive tendencies. That's the first thing I would tell you. Second thing I would tell you, if the dog is aggressive, back off. Like, find a spot and just try, if you can, get away. That's the second thing. People feel, okay, it's aggressive, I'll just try and go around it. Don't. If you have this, just back off. And that would be the two things I would tell you right away for techniques.
Anything else? Well, thanks, John. I have to, I was in town yesterday, so I'm curious.
Yes.
Because I know the peace officers it was a very busy day for law enforcement in the county of Newell.
I'm hearing that, yes.
Yeah. Everybody was texting everybody else, watch out here, watch out there. But the CP police were stationed or hanging out along the railroad track out by the South Country Co-op. Just curious, and they stopped. It was hard to figure out why and who they were stopping, and I wanted to stop and say, because I was in that area for quite some time. to say, like, what are you guys doing actually?
What it was is the Department of Transportation, the commercial vehicle, they do operations throughout the year.
Yeah.
And that was, they were doing an operation, so they invite different agencies, and then they kind of pick what agency they want to, where the agency wants to station itself. So it was a commercial vehicle operation with other agencies invited to participate.
So that's why the CP were...
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that must have been one of the agencies, I'm assuming they invited, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And enjoy the rest of your days off.
I will. Thank you.
And we'll invite Corporal Harms, right? Yes. To the hot seat here. Welcome. Have you joined us before?
No, this is my first time, so please bear with me on this.
Well, you bear with us too, okay?
Okay, so.
We will do, first of all, some introductions.
Okay.
So that you're totally confused by the time you're done. We do have nameplates up here, but
For sure.
as you know, we have a big county, and there are 10 of us. We also have a big council. There are 2 people away today. Our Div 6, which is a Bazzano area councillor, and our Div 2, Tilly area councillor, that is missing.
Right.
And so we'll start over to my right with Lionel.
Good morning. My name is Lionel Juss, and I represent Division 10, which is north and east of Brooks.
Morning, Brian DeJong, Div 8, which is around the village of Dutchess.
Good morning, I'm Tracy Fife, Division 5. So I cover south and west of Brooks, Castles, Antelope Creek, Lake Mill Resort, this area here.
Excellent. Good morning, Wayne Hammergren. I'm from Division 4, which is Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City area. Right.
Good morning, Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Excellent.
Good morning, Clarence Samuelin, and I live in Rolling Hills.
And I'm Molly Douglas, and I get to chair these meetings because I'm the Reeve. And I live in the North Country, the hotbed of crime, Jam Finnegan area.
Okay.
Welcome. I'm Kevin.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Unra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
I'm Pam Elliott, and I'm Admin Assistant for Planning and Development, looking after Ariana's job today.
Hi there, Lane Johnson. I'm the Director of Corporate Services.
Sandra Stanway, Brooks Bulletin.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, because it is my first time, and thank goodness most of you have nameplates, because I will not remember all that. So, but thank you for that. A little bit about me. So, yeah, I'm one of the corporals at the detachment. I've been in Brooks for 10 months. I was brought here as a watch commander. Several months ago, I was actually moved into a different position, which is the second in charge at the detachment, just until we fill that position. So it's kind of temporary. So I'm looking after the operations side of the detachment. So I work a lot side by side with Staff Sergeant Zanadine, and it's not uncommon for me to sometimes attend some of his meetings when he's unable to. So hence why I'm here today, sort of thing. So. Yes, thank you very much.
Corporal, can I ask a question?
You most certainly can.
What is a watch commander?
So, it's a good question. We have 4 watch commanders at the detachment, and all a watch is, it's a detachment within a detachment. So, it's a unit of members that work together, and a watch commander is the supervisor in charge of that group of people. Okay. For example, today there is a watch of officers on duty. Basically a team, so it's watch number 1, and they have a supervisor overseeing them. They operate as their own detachment, so there's no one else working other than that watch, and they will manage today's calls and issues today by themselves. They'll be relieved this evening by another watch that comes on and again operates as its own unit sort of thing. So it's that the best way to describe it is a detachment within a detachment sort of thing. And then so we have 4 watches with 4 supervisors, and that's what I was brought here for, is a supervisor for one of those watches. And like I say, right now I'm sitting in the operations chair, kind of overseeing all 4 of those watches, I guess, if you will, in an operation capacity sort of thing. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Excellent. Okay.
Rob, where'd you come from?
So prior to Brooks, I was posted in Stellar, and prior to that, I was in Three Hills, and prior to that, I was in Elk Point. So, yeah, I've been all in Alberta, and mostly in the central and southern part of Alberta, which I love, by the way. And like I say, I've been in Brooks for 10 months, and Brooks has probably been the best place I've lived, and this is the best posting I've had so far. So I'm very much enjoying it. It's been a very, very pleasant surprise. So it's outstanding.
That's, you know what, that's a great thing Sandra, to get in the paper. This one you can print.
Now, Sandra and I go way back. I think I met Sandra on my first day here. So, yeah, we talk lots about stuff like that. So.
It's good to hear, Rob. Anyhow,
Yes.
we'll let you get to the agenda, which is your report, and then a request to link a county website with a crime map.
Very well. And if I'm correct, I believe you guys all have copies of this. Is that correct? Okay. So this report was prepared by Staff Sergeant Zanadine, as well as his support staff. So I'm going to go through it, and I'm just going to start at the start of it. And he starts off, very first paragraph, I want to make a correction. The stats do not reflect April 1st to June 1st. They reflect April 1st to June 30th, being our first fiscal quarter. Okay, he's indicating we've responded to 627 calls for service within the county. 158 prisoners were lodged into our detachment. 129 criminal record checks completed. Members responded to 57 motor vehicle collisions, of which 6 involved injuries, and unfortunately 1 was a fatality. Members logged 284 rural patrols into the rural area during this time. Now, the one thing I want to clarify is, you know, like I said, this reflects April 1st to June 30th. The 627 calls, as soon as I seen that, and by the way, I just looked at this today, to me that seemed awfully excessive for the county, and it is. It's a little bit skewed, and I don't fully understand that number yet. I was trying to pound that out just before I got here. That 627 actually represents every type of violation we've encountered in the county. We didn't have 627 calls. In fact, it's closer to 40 or 50 calls. But when we break down those calls, there's different offenses that are kind of linked to those calls. For example, if a member went to a traffic complaint, for example, that's a call. But when he got to that call, maybe that individual was also impaired and also had drugs and was also lodged into cells. So that 627 actually captures all of those elements. Okay, so one call might actually have 4 or 5 different elements to it. So it's a little bit skewed, and I'm going to talk to Staff Sergeant Zanadine about that to make sure that that's understood, you know, going forward in the future reports. So it's not like we had 627 calls or responses to the community, or sorry, to the county in that time. So does that make sense? Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. Highlighting some of those calls that we responded to, I'll just go through that real quick. April 30th, this was a big one for us. We had a complaint of an erratic driver on Highway 1 near the Tilly area coming towards Brooks. One officer responded to that, and we take a lot of pride in trying to intercept those types of vehicles. And that vehicle was located and stopped. Unfortunately, as soon as that vehicle was stopped, the driver chose to use that vehicle as basically a weapon and basically drove at the officer as she was getting out of her police car. And that elevated that whole thing right away to a very serious call. And after he tried to basically ram her in that police car, he fled the scene, and that resulted in basically a high-speed pursuit. Now, high-speed pursuits, we don't like to initiate those because there's another element of danger there, but that one was basically an authorized pursuit because of the severity of what had happened. The vehicle reached speeds of 170 kilometers an hour, including on Highway 1 and on Highway 873, and in very short order, because of public safety, we stood that down. Now, just because we stand something like that down doesn't mean we're done with it. We actually mobilized other detachments to kind of close in the area, and I'm glad to report that we had success on this one, and HANA officers were able to intercept that vehicle. Unfortunately, that vehicle hit the ditch right beside the HANA officers and was quickly immobilized, and the members were able to arrest that person. So that person was subject to many charges: dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, assault with a weapon being the vehicle itself, flight from police, and possession of marijuana. So just gives kind of a snapshot of some of the things that are happening on the highways, and how something as simple as a traffic complaint can actually be much more than that, and be elevated sort of things. So we had a good outcome on that one. May 5th, members responded to a vehicle partially submerged in a slough off of Highway 36 near the Rock Lake Reservoir. That individual was actually trying to start his vehicle while it was submerged and trying to get out of the slough. And no surprise to the officers, after seeing that, that individual was impaired by alcohol, and in fact was 2.5 times the legal limit. So a 37-year-old fellow was arrested because of that. May 12th, members responded to a break-and-enter at a rural residence in the Rolling Hills area. There was jewelry, a laptop computer, and a safe containing cash and documents stolen. That safe was later recovered in the Wardlaw area. We haven't brought that file to conclusion yet. It's still under investigation and being looked at, so we'll see where that one goes. May 23rd, Brooks RCMP responded to a serious assault in Dutchess. This one made the, I think, the media Alberta-wide, if I'm right. Sandra would know more on that. This is where an individual tried to intervene with someone stealing his roommate's truck, and as a result of that intervention, he was actually beaten quite seriously with some type of weapon, such as a tire iron or a bat, and he actually received life-threatening injuries and was taken to Calgary Hospital. Glad to report he's going to be okay. He is banged up pretty good. With something of that magnitude, we responded to that right away. There was multiple officers on scene immediately. We actually engaged our police dog section as well, our forensic unit, the Alberta Major Crimes Unit, and the Brooks detachment is fortunate enough to have GIS members, which is General Investigation members, and we engaged them as well. And we haven't made an arrest on that matter yet. It's still under investigation, but a great response by the police, and we honestly couldn't engage any other resources on that. We've given that every effort that we possibly can, so I'm hoping we have a good result on this one. June 9th, serious collision involving a pickup truck and a tractor-trailer unit on Highway 36, right on the Bow River Bridge near Scandia. This one also made media across Alberta. Basically, it was determined that there was a head-on collision, basically right in the middle of the bridge. There was a 34-year-old male driver that died at the scene. I would hesitate, or not hesitate, I would say probably instantly. The other driver only received minor physical injuries. Drug and alcohol is not a factor. There was substantial damage to the bridge, to the pavement, I believe, and in fact there was even a loss of diesel fuels and stuff like that into the river. Now that was one accident scene that I went to myself and oversaw. One thing I want to comment on there is there was different fire departments there, including from Brooks and the Scandia area, I believe. Fantastic response from them. It was really great to see. They deployed their aquatic members and were in the river right away with their boats and booms. And because of having those resources and that ability, I would say there was minimal damage, if any at all, to the environment. It was really great to see. So that's something to be really proud of. So that's just a few of the the types of files that we worked on and what the members are working on. Is there any questions on that?
I'm kind of amazed that total prisoners of 158 in 90 days. That's 1.5 or 2, almost getting close to 2 a day. What, just roughly, what type of offenses are these?
The first thing we've got to make sure we understand that 158 is that would be total, right? Not coming necessarily out of the county, but coming out of the county, the city, and so on. Sometimes even out of the jurisdiction. But those range from everything, from some of the stuff I talked about, like the impaired drivers, some people that are intoxicated in public. Lots of our prisoners that we bring in are arrested because they have outstanding warrants from our jurisdiction or other jurisdictions. But it truly is just a wide range of things. So lots of assault calls and lots of domestic violence calls as well. So real wide range of stuff.
So I should probably know this, but I've forgotten. Is there a dog stationed in Brooks then? A dog unit?
There's not a dog stationed here. Our closest dog service comes out of Calgary, believe it or not. Now I know that's a 2-hour drive. Under normal circumstances, they can get here considerably quicker. But yeah, that is our closest dog. When they're not available, we get dogs that can come out of Lethbridge. I think if we're in a real pinch, we could probably lean on Medicine Hat Police Service to send a dog as well. So there is some other options there, but typically they come out of Calgary.
Not a question, but a comment. The day of the the morning after the Bow City Bridge incident was the rodeo parade, and Kevin Swanson was the the honored person anyhow, because it was a salute to heroes and in your community, and he had been up most of the night involved in that and was quite concerned still, but he said, oh no, everything will be fine. He brought Barry Morshita and I up to date on it, and I just thought of the professionalism of, you mentioned the good group that were out there, so yeah. Yeah,
it was stellar for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is always great to hear about our first responders.
Absolutely, that's why I bring that up. I think a lot of times there's unsung heroes that work in our communities, and that's a fine example of that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, any other questions? We'll move on then from the report to whatever's next.
Sure. I've got some comments here just on our staffing situation.
Right.
With the RCMP, it's very standard for people to come and go sort of thing. We've got a few new members that have arrived here. Constable Jalal Ozga graduated from Depot April 9th. He is here and well entrenched already and working, and going to be a fantastic member. Constable Francis Bordeaux graduated June 4th. He as well is here and already working. He's only got a few weeks in, but doing very well. Constable Amain Gorman graduated from Depot on June 11th. She too is here, and she's got a few weeks in, and she is doing well. Interesting thing about her, she's the first hijab-wearing Mountie in Canada and was assigned to Brooks. So it's very neat to see for sure. So she has some real connections to the area and the people here. So doing fantastic. Constable Neil Hayter was assigned to or transferred to Brooks Detachment here some time ago. He's out of Red Cliff. He has a house in Medicine Hat, which hasn't yet sold, so we're still waiting on that. More recently, a member by the name of Sharon Peters from Williams Lake, BC, received a transfer notice to come to Brooks. She's very excited about coming here, and surprisingly, she sold her house in very short order, and she should be here in no time at all, and she will be our new school resource officer, so it won't be long and she'll be landing here. So those are the people coming here. We are losing a few of our members, 4 in total right now. Constable Abdullah Mahid, who is our GIS member, our plainclothes member, he's going to Cochrane GIS. Constable Kim is our domestic violence coordinator. She's going to the Airdrie crew team. which is a crime reduction unit, and Constable Pomelo, who works on one of the watches, and his wife, Constable Jutras, who is our SRO, are going to Ottawa. So those members are on their way out. So right now, with the number of members coming in and the number leaving, we're pretty status quo right now. So we're happy with that. Moving on, just to the stat sheets. There's 2 stat sheets there that basically represent our calls in the second quarter of 2018 and compare them to the previous 4 years. Just gives you a snapshot. If you're not familiar with this report, the column I always look at is the trend column. So that just gives you a snapshot of what direction that category of call is heading. I've looked over these numbers. For the most part, they're very status quo from previous years, and there's really no concerns there. I do notice halfway down on the first page, there's a category called theft under 5,000. Little bit of a spike there. We're at 16 right now in 2018 compared to 7 the previous year. If we look at previous years, we have lots of fluctuation there. It's very typical to see that category kind of cycle and go up and down like that. Another, just 2 lines under that is the fraud section. We have a little bit of a spike there, not much. We have 8 this year compared to 5 the previous year and 4 the year before that. Frauds are a nasty thing for us because basically that's an international problem now. A lot of these frauds are done over the phone or over computers, and these guys are very good at what they do, and unfortunately they snag a few victims along the way, so to speak, and people get defrauded from them. So it's something we work on. Nevertheless, those numbers are not crazy, such as some other municipalities are seeing. So that's the good news on that. Referring to the second page of the stat sheet, about 3/4 of the way down, I noticed quite a spike in the provincial traffic column. And if you see there, we got 1,298 for 2018 compared to 356 the year before, and similar numbers years before that. The reason there's a spike there is our traffic ticket system has gone electronic, and now all the traffic tickets that our traffic guys write and our general duty guys write are now included in these stats where they weren't in previous years, simply because they're captured on databases now. So that's why there's a spike there. So yeah, very typical numbers there. I don't think there's anything too concerning there. Is there any questions on the statistics that I just breezed over?
I have one, but Lon?
Yeah, the fraud issue really interests me.
Mm-hmm.
I recently, this last week, got a phone call from Toronto, my credit card department. And it was legit, but I've been ignoring their emails because I get so many junk emails,
mm-hmm.
and you don't know which ones are frauds and which ones aren't.
Yep.
And so, unfortunately, I neglected my credit card payments, but because I didn't expect...
Did they buy that as an excuse?
No.
For waiving interest charges?
No, they didn't. They charged me interest anyway.
Of course.
But that's fine. But the point is that you know, that was on my personal account, and so I don't understand. I can't determine which ones are legit and which ones aren't, and so I just delete them all.
Yeah.
And that isn't an answer either. So.
Yeah.
You're becoming a county employee. You've learned. Don't open it.
That's right. I don't. No, exactly. Yeah.
Good.
Well, at the same date, I had BMO, 2 from BMO, 1 from RBC stating my account was delinquent. I don't have an RBC account. You know, that's my point. I don't know which ones are real and which ones aren't.
Yeah. My comments on that are, if it doesn't look right or feel right, it's probably not right. There's so much fraud out there, and computer fraud and phone fraud is the leading frauds right now, because the problem with that is you can't see who's on the other end. So you get an email or you get a phone call, and a lot of these come across as legit, and that's the problem. And they're always asking for some type of payment on something, and that should be a red flag, right? You need to investigate that before you do anything if you owe money or whatever. you need to look at that. If you're not sure about it, don't go forward with the call or with whatever they're asking. Hang up, phone your bank, phone whoever the organization is that they're claiming to be, and look into it that way. Okay. One of the most common frauds that we're seeing right now is related to iTunes cards. There is fraudsters phoning victims claiming that they're with a certain organization, whether it's Canada Revenue or taxes, or even a police agency saying you need to pay us a certain amount of money and you need to do it right away or you'll get arrested. So please pay us $3,500, but it must be in the form of iTunes gift cards. Red flag. Like, I don't know of any organization.
I'd even figure that one out.
That's right. But it's amazing how many people fall victim to that because of the pressure put on them and basically the threats. And we've been successful tracking where some of these iTunes cards are going and the money associated to them. A lot of them are, just about all of them are out of country. A lot of them are on the other side of the world, sort of thing. And that's a real problem for us investigating because we only have, jurisdiction in Canada, and we can't fly across the world to go talk to someone, sort of thing. So it's real problematic. Now the great news there is, whenever we bring a new member into the detachment from training, they're mandated to do a crime prevention program. And one of the programs selected for them to do is to actually try and prevent some of this fraud that's going on, including with iTunes cards. And we've done that before with presentations and talks in the community. But we have some ideas to kind of approach it from a different angle, including right at the rack where you buy iTunes cards, such as alerts and notices, and maybe even involve store clerks and things like that. So that's one of the things we're doing to combat it. So, yeah, absolutely.
Other questions? I just had one quick one about mischief to property, which is a big number. At, what do I call them here? No, it isn't. It was the wrong column. No, ignore that. Any other questions or comments? Tracy.
My question was just if you could just kind of comment around false alarms, because that's something I know that has been troublesome in the last few years. And now, like this year, there's been 23, but the numbers were significantly higher over the years. And are false alarms getting a little under wrap now and not?
Well, if we look at the stats, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because that was something I seen when I first looked at this report. Every detachment I've served at, false alarms have been a problem, because false alarms are about 90 to 95% of our alarm calls. And the problem with getting a false alarm call is we don't know it's false usually until we get there. So you have a police car that's maybe taken off of a priority call, sometimes going with lights and sirens through the city into, onto busy highways, which is a risk by itself, to get to a call where there's no emergency. So there's a resource issue, plus there's a safety issue. So it is a big problem, and it has been for years. This is one of the few times where I've seen current stats less than previous years. Okay, so we're sitting at 23 right now for the county compared to 39 the previous year. So that's very favorable and encouraging to see that. I don't know why that is. I know one approach we've taken is we've sent letters and notices to owners of alarms where there's multiple false alarms and saying, hey, attended your business or your residence again, for the third time in so many months or whatever it is, there must be a problem. Please look into it and address it. So just a kind of a courtesy letter and stuff. That may have a bit of an impact. I'm not sure. Plus, we like to talk to the owners of the alarms when we do respond to them. And if they are false, obviously we'll have that discussion as well. Why is it false and what they can do to avoid it? Welcome.
All right, we'll move on to are we at the crime map?
Yeah, I got just that last point about the crime index mapping.
Okay.
So I don't have any documentation on it, but I'm somewhat familiar with it. The RCMP has gone Alberta-wide, talking to all the municipalities, including the counties, about a new initiative, which is a great initiative, and it is called the Crime Index Mapping System. Basically what it is, it's a website. You log on to the website, you will see the province of Alberta. You can zoom into any part. This is assuming that all our partners are on site. You can zoom into any part of the province, and you will see little flags. Let's take the county here, for example, in surrounding Brooks. You will see little flags of the calls and the crimes that we're responding to. Okay, for example, if there's a break and enter at a certain residence, that map will show a flag not at the residence but near that residence to show that a crime has happened there, and that flag will be a certain flag which will reflect the crime. Okay, for example, if a vehicle is stolen, it'll show a different type of flag, which is, for example, I think it's a vehicle in itself. So you can zoom in, and within seconds you get a snapshot of what type of crime is happening in that area. Now, the one thing that the RCMP needs is we need the municipalities to house that mapping system on their websites, if they have a website, because the RCMP doesn't have a public website that we can download this onto. And it's my understanding that most municipalities are on side with this. And anyone, police officers, yourselves, the general public, can go onto that map and see what's happening in their communities. And it does a whole bunch of things. For the officers, we use that as a work tool. So when I come on shift and I want a quick snapshot of what's happening, you know, in the last 24 hours or maybe even the last week, I can log onto that map and I can see the flags. And it's amazing when you plot this stuff on a map, all of a sudden how much wiser you get to where it's actually happening. With me, I read reports every day and I see addresses, but I can't process that to see exactly where it's happening. So when you put it on a map and all of a sudden you see all the flags or one particular area, all of a sudden that police officer is a lot smarter, knowing where he has to send his resources, right? For civilians, they can see the exact same thing. The advantage for them, power is knowledge. If they know that crime is happening in their areas, hopefully they're going to get wise to that. They're going to open their eyes. They're going to be more alert. Hopefully call the police when the police need to be called, and be a good neighbor to all the other neighbors when they know things are happening. It's also nice to know when things aren't happening in your area. You know, you can see all the flags are maybe elsewhere and far away from where you live and things like that. So that's kind of the idea of the mapping system. There's no cost to the counties. I understand the setup is only a matter of minutes. Once it's set up, we take one of our employees and they actually manage that system. So there's no management required by the county or any of the other municipalities. So in this case here, we've selected Jolene Fraser, our Safe Communities facilitator, to help us with that. She's already taken some training on it. Very simple stuff, only takes her a couple minutes a day, and also helps her with her job and lets her know what she's got to focus on as well. So that's kind of the idea there.
Questions? There were some possibilities of concerns that in really rural remote it would almost give criminals some further information. I don't know if that's valid.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going with this. I haven't met a criminal yet that's actually gone onto a computer system that we know of and kind of plotted out where they're going to do their stuff. But we have to be mindful that could be the issue. When we plot these flags, especially in the rural areas, it's done in a very general manner. For example, we don't plot flags right on a house that may have been subject to a break and enter. That flag might be show just in the general vicinity sort of thing. And the whole purpose of that is being mindful of exactly what you're talking about. Being respectful to the homeowners and the victims, yet not pointing out specifics about exactly where the crime is happening, i.e. a certain address. So we be as protective as we can be, so to speak.
Any other, Anne-Marie?
I like this. So
Pardon me?
I like this. This is good information.
Good.
Reading it, I did think, I wonder if it has influence on economic development and people wanting to move to this area, or if I would want to move somewhere else, I would maybe start looking at a map like this and say, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. That's a good point. When I transferred to Brooks, I did all the studies I could. What is Brooks? I'd never been here before. What is Brooks all about? A lot of that was done on the internet, looking at Stats Canada, looking at the city websites, looking at the county websites. If that's available, that's going to be probably something else that I would have looked at, and I think other people would probably do the same. Will it have an impact? I don't know. It would probably make that person a little bit wiser, for sure. I like to think that we will have a step up on it and be acting on problem areas and things like that. So that's kind of how I think about it. So it's a difficult one to answer.
Any other questions in regards to the crime mapping? No? Was there anything else today? Rob, I know we
That's all I have. Most certainly, if there's something else that anyone wants to talk about, I'm here for that.
Anything else on the crime mapping, or do you feel comfortable? You want to get it past the motion? Clarence?
Well, Lane had comments about privacy and stuff, and so I wouldn't mind if he verbalized that a little bit more. I find that in the rural areas, I know we had an incident there in our place, and I just made sure everybody in the countryside knew. So I wasn't too worried about the fact that everybody knew that there had been somebody there. So I found it strange. So maybe, Lane, if you can just elaborate a little bit.
When this came in, I guess thinking initially that it's a great idea, I think that it's another tool that would certainly provide some assistance, but just a couple of thoughts came to mind. In a truly rural area where you don't have very high concentration of homes, if the locations are plotted on a map, it is going to be easy enough to find which properties have been hit by crime. You're one exception in that you're willing to share that information, but others aren't always eager about letting everyone know that they've been a victim. If it's a fraud that they've been a victim of, some of those individuals are less likely to want that information out there for public consumption. So I'm not suggesting for a minute that it isn't a good tool, that consideration shouldn't be given to moving ahead with, but there were a couple of flags that came up that I think should be given some consideration.
If I can comment on that, I think it's important to understand we don't download all of our crimes onto the map. It's all property crimes. So, for example, if we're talking frauds, assaults, sexual assaults, things like that, that's a different boat sort of thing, and usually those are a very different animal, so to speak. This is a property crime map, so we're talking stolen vehicles, break-and-enters, thefts, things like that. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about, and I think we have to understand that because people might be more open to sharing that information with neighbors and on websites and things like that. So another thing we can do too, if we want more information on this, we do have a presentation which includes a PowerPoint and kind of shows snapshots of what it can do, for the community and the viewer. So that's something we can arrange as well if that's needed.
Thanks, Rob. Any other questions or concerns, or you want to make a motion today, or you want further information? How are you feeling? Brian?
I'll make the motion to approve this request, and I think it's a great idea and another tool. And I sort of would mimic what Councillor Amelong said, is if we have property crime in the area, I share it with every neighbor. I mean, we've had gas stolen years and years ago, and that's one thing that we wanted to get that information out up and down the road for either to put your locks on or be aware of, sort of the rural crime thing, right? Be aware and make sure that the strange vehicles or the ones you're not used to seeing going up and turning into driveways and abandoned yards and stuff that you're aware and that your neighbors are aware. So,
yeah.
But this is just, I agree, it's just one other tool. It would be interesting to see, if there is information that evolves out of this, like you mentioned another presentation. I'm still interested in seeing this, but it wouldn't change my mind as far as supporting what you're doing. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly the advantage to the rural areas. If stuff's happening, I think neighbors need to know about that, and a quick look at that map will kind of show them what's happening and where, and they can take steps to protect themselves and their property as well.
And it is, as you said, a limited number of crimes that with Facebook now and social media seems to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So this would put a little, perhaps more accuracy into the whole story.
Right.
But sometimes neighborhoods get going. Tracy?
Well, I like the idea too as well because it kind of ties into the Rural Crime Watch theory as well as information and notification, and this is just another tool for people to be aware of what's happening. So I really like it.
All right, Brian has put the motion forward. Any other comments? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. So that is, I think, all good today. Rob, thank you so much for your report.
Very well. Thank you, people, and it was great meeting you all. So
yeah,
thank you.
And you know what? We are pretty proud of the fact that the last year or so there's been lots of talk about rural crime, and all of us have been at, or not all of us, but many of us have gone to sessions, and we really feel that the fact that the County of Newell, I know our location helps us because we are further from the major crime areas perhaps, but we also believe it's the visibility and the leadership of our local detachments. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Oh, Kevin.
I was just going to say a good thing to add to that would be the actual picture of the criminal when you catch him, so that we can see, who's who.
Maybe phase 2 or 3. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Rob. All right. We will go on to, how about discussion on public consumption of cannabis? Todd's coming back after 1. We have a 1 o'clock delegation, so we will definitely go to item 8.1.
So this one follows up to the discussion that took place during MPC that was dealing with the land-related matters. This one directly related to the federal government's initiative, and some guidance is required regarding the direction the council wants to take with regards to the consumption of cannabis in public spaces. We've provided the information there for you. There is an opportunity for municipalities to just let the provincial standards apply, or if there is interest in setting a higher standard that would restrict the consumption in public places to more than those that are listed by the government of Alberta, you're certainly in a position to do so. The information is there, and what we require is just some direction as to which way you want us to go on this.
So do we want to blame the provincial government for everything that goes wrong in the community now? Well, a province says. What are your thoughts? Do you have further questions? Lots of information there. There's the federal and the provincial stuff, and how it links in with tobacco and smoking. What will the direction be? And also, I think there is a question about the public participation feedback process. There's been, now the City of Brooks, when they posted that, that involved consumption too in places, didn't it? So there has been some public participation, and that did get quite a number of county responses, it seems to me.
Yeah, the city undertook a feedback process, had a formal survey. We have not done anything internally that focuses on receiving feedback from county residents as such. Given the fact that we're going to be discussing later in the meeting the public participation policy, it probably would have been good if we had gone through that kind of a process, but we don't have any firm results that we can say, here's the position of the public within the county on this particular issue.
And as I read through the survey results, I got the feeling that it was just a lot of frustrated people who didn't want any part of any of this. So I don't know if it'd be helpful or not, because it's here. We can't make it go away. Don't all speak at once. Do we want to create additional restrictions? Wayne?
I don't think we need any more restrictions. If you treat it the same as alcohol, we don't walk down the middle of Brooks streets in Brooks or anywhere drinking a beer. And I think the same thing with smoking a reefer. You just don't do it. People want to do it in their own house, and of course they can't do it in the beer parlor either, because you can't smoke in there. So,
boy, words like reefer and beer parlor make me think you're about 80 years old.
I'm getting close. You know, I keep bringing these terms back, and they might catch on again.
So you're saying that basically the provincial regulations would suffice. Ellen?
However, if we rely upon the provincial standards for the consumption of cannabis, not by liquor but smoking, they can smoke it in public parks, sidewalks, pedestrian pathways, golf courses, except playground areas. Right?
I think that's been happening for quite a few years. And I think enforcement gets to be another issue. That becomes the bigger problem, unfortunately. But that is accurate information, Ellen, as you pointed out. Are we going to? Yeah. Lionel?
Well, I know in the rec board, we've dealt with this a number of times, the CRA, for instance, and the rec center in Brooks, and we tried to designate smoking areas, but it never worked. Smokers kind of decide where they want to smoke. And so it's a little difficult. Now, I don't know whether smoking tobacco whether smoking cannabis is going to be different than smoking tobacco, whether there's going to be different designations. I'm not sure about that. I doubt it in people's mind. I don't think they're going to care.
So this is also, is this something that Joint Services should give some input to? So that this might be even more important than where retail sales are located, as you move around our region, if there's different rules in different communities.
Yeah, I think probably it may be a good topic to bring up at Joint Services. Yes, that might be a good spot to start. Because generally in the county, the use of cannabis in the county, well, it's wide open, more or less. We don't, other than in the communities, in the hamlets, which I don't know that you're going to see a lot of it, other than around the halls maybe, but you're not going to see a lot of it around the hamlets. And out in the rural area, I don't foresee there being a problem anyway, so.
Well, that is one of the options that is mentioned in this report, because we have, there has been that discussion. Because I know the AUMA were taking quite a hard stance on the consumption in particular. I think the location retail sales as well, just because they could back off if need be, rather than tighten up, which as a former teacher was certainly my rule in September. You can always loosen up, but you can't go back the other way very, very easily. So let's have joint services have a kick at it in September. Sound okay? All right, Lane. We'll go with that. Sorry, Brian.
Well, I just wanted to, add my 2 bits worth in. I feel so out of my element. I don't know what'll work and what doesn't work. So how do we get that information? It's great for us to get this data and try to determine what's a good location, and whether you paint a park bench yellow and say that's the only place you can smoke it on a park because you don't want to affect other children or whatever. I mean, that all is a great idea, but I just, we're sort of stumbling around here, and how do we get more information from people that could actually be the ones that are participating in this, that are using this product, to say what's logical with them, because I think that needs to be done too. So, is there a way that we can get some of that information? And I'm not suggesting a full-blown survey, but I don't know. I feel a little bit like we're spinning our wheels, or I'm spinning my wheels, because I just don't know the answer. And it's great for us to say, well, this is the direction we're going to go, but I'm not sure we have the information to make that decision.
So that can be something we talk about at joint services, Lionel, Tracy, as well. Is there public participation process required to involve users? I don't know. Anyhow, we're going to put it on hold and see what we can do. Come up, have a more regional talk about it. And we're going to move on to policy review, funding, approval, funding, and reporting of budget variances. And that's Mr. Budget himself, Mr. Money himself, Money Matt Fensky.
I've been called worse.
I'm sure
I'll
you
take
have.
that.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say I'm sure you have.
It comes as no surprise people call you worse things than...
I'm surprised, Matt. It would be a better response.
I'll work on my image.
No, I think you're good.
So we have a few policies in front of council that we've reviewed, some relatively minor updates to some of these things. For this first one, looking at renaming it to approval, funding, and reporting of budget variances. The old policy I had attached for your reference along with the new one, which included the changes. Some of the suggested updates include adding definitions for different types of budget variances, so ones that can be managed within existing budget and ones that are going to require some extra thought on how we're going to fund the variances. The new policy provides some leeway for directors and managers to manage their GL account variances of up to $2,500 per account without having to run to the CAO for approval. So there's a lot of times where there's minor variances, and I think overall they don't impact service levels. They're within the overall budget of the function, and it gives your directors and managers the ability to manage without adding additional administrative burden for items which aren't significant in the scheme of things. Provision for the CAO to approve up to a total of $75,000 of additional spending during a fiscal period. Our old 2008 policy gave leeway for $50,000, so over that time budget's gone up. If you looked at an inflationary factor, I think I came in around $69,000, but $69,000 doesn't get you much. In looking at other municipalities' policies, some have $100,000 as the limit. I think my experience with our CAO is that he really likes to be transparent, and he brings all those significant spending items your way anyways. But it does give some leeway for approving things as they are in motion. And it includes, the new policy includes a provision for reporting of the approved budget variances. So you receive a quarterly financial package from me, and we have all the accounts that are overspent, and if it's significant, we explain where those variances are either approved by separate motion of council or where things have been shifted around. So hopefully those reports have been useful. I try not to spend too much time on, $10 over, under. Now, with the $2,500 in here for managers, I probably won't spend a ton of time explaining things with a $2,500 or less variance, unless you'd like to have the book. I can write the book.
Questions for Matt? Ready to make a motion? Anne-Marie? Would be to approve policy 2018-025. No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The next policy in front of us is update to the purchasing policy. So this kind of goes against the direction I typically like to go with policy. I like to think of myself as a concise individual who doesn't like to blow things up. But over the 7 years being here, there have been times where directors, managers have come to me wanting to know what they can do within the policy. So we've kind of ballooned the purchasing policy. We went from 2 pages to, I think we've got 13 now. Over that time, we've also had new provincial trade agreements come into play, as well as a Canada-European trade agreement, which adds some administrative burden for purchases over certain thresholds. So this updated policy includes the administrative work we have to do to meet those trade agreements. It just spells it out. So what we're hoping to accomplish with this purchasing policy is a one-stop shop for you to discharge your obligations as either a director, manager, whoever. They may have also delegated authority to initiate purchases. This is where you come to find out how to keep your nose clean and check off all the legislative boxes for purchasing. We've added a definition section, an ethics and code of conduct section. We have a quick reference guide. In the old policy, there were different thresholds for what you needed to do between different dollar amounts. We're looking at the updated threshold, $0 to $2,500, which aligns with our previous policy for $2,500 is discretionary. It doesn't mean you can't get quotes. The overall philosophy of our purchasing policy is value for money. I know that's something that our directors and managers take very seriously. But purchases between that $0 to $2,500, we're not looking for any evidence that you received a quote. These are incidental purchases. You may come. We don't need to see 3 quotes for those. Between the $2,500 and the $75,000 mark, at a minimum, we want to see competitive pricing, which typically means 3 quotes. And then we want to see evidence of those 3 quotes followed the winning invoice. So we've got a provision in the new policy for how the records management should work on that. That isn't to say that that requirement was not there in the old policy. We still expected people to have those quotes, but I think we've made it a little more explicit in how that should work administratively. No point in going through the effort of writing a policy requiring these things if we don't then maintain the evidence that what we requested in the policy actually happened. We've rolled the tender process policy into the purchasing policy. What else do we have here? I think that's kind of the Coles notes of it. I'm not sure if there were any sections which stood out. I'm kind of interested to get feedback with respect to the related party section of the ethics section of the purchasing policy. Talks about making purchases through related parties. We do have a requirement to disclose material related party transactions. So if Councillor Kalin, he provides solid waste services in Tilly. If that was a significant dollar amount, that's something that we would disclose in the financial statements. It's not significant. We do have the general provision that related party transactions should be avoided. The policy doesn't say they're prohibited, but just in terms of keeping things on the up and up, that suggestion is in there.
We'll start with that. Are there any comments? That's on page 3 of 13, the related party. It's always an interesting, there's lots of related parties that wouldn't want to ever get involved if you're the related party at this table anyhow. You know, it just is a dicey area to go. But gives people the option. Any other comments, questions? Ready to roll?
I'm just on this related party issue. I think there's a difference between initiating that when you're in the position to start with, like at least in our, not at our level. I mean, he comes in, he's already been doing it. That's one thing, but for one of us to get into business, that's something I would discourage.
You hope some common sense might prevail, but that's always iffy also. Brian?
Well, my only comment was you must have been hanging around planning and development too much to go from a 2 to a 13-page policy, but sorry, I couldn't resist. What's that? But
no must comment. Be good reasons.
No, I think it's. I did read through it, and I think you've captured this very well, and I'd be happy to make the motion to support this policy or changes.
Anything else on that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
All right, and the last one here is a proposed asset management policy. So I don't think it comes as any surprise that asset management is a focus nationally, provincially. There's a number of grant programs supporting municipalities to develop their capacity for asset management. So that's what this policy is. Asset management is the process of making decisions about the use and care of infrastructure to deliver services in a way that considers current and future needs, manages risks and opportunities, and makes the best use of resources. We've been managing assets ever since we've been providing services as a municipality. What this policy will hopefully do is make it clear that the county is committed to improving our asset management systems, procedures, processes, expertise. We struck a committee at the management team level back in 2017 to look at asset management, identify the gaps. The committee has looked at ISO standards for asset management. We've reviewed a number of asset management plans from other communities, which have provided us with some, I think, good background for moving forward with improving upon our existing asset management practices and systems. So that committee set 2 objectives. First, to develop the policy. The policy will set the direction for what we do next with our asset management plan, developing that plan. I'm not sure if there's any questions about the policy. It's really a high-level document. It doesn't get into the granular details of of how we will manage our assets. It really just sets the direction for the next steps. And the next steps will be informed by ISO standards and the principles outlined in the policy. So the policy does outline some responsibilities. The one that council's responsible for is policy, approving the policy. So I'm open to questions on this one.
Are there any? So we'll get a motion in place. Tracy moves for approval of the asset management policy. Seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Matt, nothing else today? Thank you. All right, we will break for lunch. And we have a 1 o'clock delegation. Do you want to reconvene earlier than that, or is 1 o'clock good? 1 o'clock's good? Okay. And, yeah, we have a delegation at 1. Thank you. I will call the meeting back to order a little bit ahead of time because I think everybody's here that needs to be here. So our agenda picks up at Economic Development, Branding and Communications Strategy, our 1 o'clock delegation of 2 of my favorite lovely ladies, Jessica and Lisa. Welcome. Come to the hot chairs and just talk. Or maybe it's different.
That makes sense. The big purple button. Thanks for having us. Lisa's going to give you our presentation. I'll get right into it if Lisa's okay with that. Joint Services initiated a rebranding process for the economic development marketing materials used by members of the Brooks region. The goal for this project was to provide, or is to provide, updated and focused visual materials and communication marketing strategies and messaging in order to position the Brooks region as an attractive and inviting place to do business.
Sorry, distracted. So the initiative started as the New Regional Economic Development Initiative. We've been using the term NREDI, but we knew we wanted to replace that name. The focus is still going to remain regional, of course. We're still going to be governed by the Joint Services Committee, but collaboratively we've decided on the name Brooks Region because outsiders are more likely to recognize the name Brooks. And it's easier to Google and has more recognizability, and people understand geographically where Brooks is.
The project in the end will result in a new logo, color scheme, tagline, typeface, which will all be used specifically for economic development purposes. So a new modern look for marketing materials, as well as a new website and communications marketing strategy with structured, consistent messaging will be produced from this project.
So we're still in progress. We hope to have the project wrapped up. The final deliverable is due on September 15th. So we're hoping to launch sometime this fall, and it'll be in conjunction with the new website that we're developing, so everything will get out and you'll start seeing the logo on materials this fall. So the logo is on the handout in front of you, and then you can see beneath a bit just some examples of how it pairs up with the different municipality names. So the logo, that's the Brooks Region logo, won't replace any of the municipality logos. It'll just be used for economic development, marketing, and attraction purposes.
So if you flip that page over, we go into some more detail as to what, or I guess it breaks down the logo itself. So the outer shape is the landscape shield, and this concept uses representation of regional geography to communicate the diversity of opportunity available in the Brooks region. So to break down each piece, it says it on your sheet as well, the chimney down the center is representative of our local industry, so that includes manufacturing, oil and gas. The star is provides direction for each of the municipalities. The shield outline echoes logo designs of the Newell County municipalities. And at the bottom of that chimney is a wheat stalk, and it's representative of natural landscape and local industry. And to the side there is the aqueduct, which is a heritage object, and it's representative of the region's past. And the embedded arrows suggest forward momentum. When we presented this to the Bazzano Council, they said that they also saw the Bazzano Dam in the shield as well.
It's one of the benefits of having an abstract logo, so you can see whatever you want to see.
Okay. The first one that sees the picture of Christ in it, let me know, okay? Isn't it the Virgin Mary, or who is it they always see? Yeah, the face.
Did anybody see any of the graphic elements that she just said? Or no? They're just
very abstract.
Cool.
Maybe the shield.
So in terms of color palette, typically a lot of the logos that we see around economic development in the prairies use the typical prairie color scheme, which is the brown, tan, green, blue, and we kind of wanted to get a little bit away from that to stand out a little bit more. So the color palette that the designer proposed and we liked is this muted daybreak, and it gives a nod to the idea of being up with the sunrise, and these are the colors that you see in a prairie sunrise. So then it's a reference to people that work on the land and people that are hardworking and they are up with the sun, and that kind of true grit of the people on the prairie. So you can look forward to seeing some oranges and some kind of pale reds. We looked at a few with purple, but it didn't really go as well either. So there's still probably going to be some yellows and some blues, but we're going to throw in some oranges and reds as well. Yeah, and then I can show you, we have, since we put all this together, the designers come back with some kind of final design color concepts, and I'll pass this around. I only brought one, but it shows how these colors are going to line up in it.
It presents much better in color, so you'll be able to see each of the abstract objects within that design.
Maybe you will.
It separates the objects quite a bit more. There you go. Mm-hmm.
I still don't see the embedded arrows. I've been looking at this thing for weeks, so.
Yeah. Initially, we were presented with 3 different types of logos or 3 different drawings, and the project leadership committee, which Lisa explained is made up of members of each of the municipalities, had decided on that one in the end. Another one was a abstract pheasant, and then there was more of a graphical heart type, heart of the prairie, heart of the county logo. But the project leadership group decided on this one.
So what kind of a weed is in the muted daybreak picture?
Oh, that picture is just to show you an idea of the colors. It's
a weed.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Our weed guy just walked in, and he's going to want to know.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not noxious. It's native. Yeah.
There you go. Someone did say to us as well that the star at the top could be representative of renewable energy. So we met with a stakeholder in economic development in this region, and they said it could be representing that as well. So you see different things that maybe relate to you more than others. Well, yes, we're finished.
The logo will not replace your municipal logo. Why not? Why don't we all go with the same logo and then add your name to it if you want? If we're going to be regional, then let's have the same logo.
It's probably not up to these girls.
Sure, no, that's above our pay grade.
We can decide that, I think, at a council level. Anne-Marie, that would have to come from our municipalities, I believe.
We're not intending to replace anybody here. Everybody's still going to remain their own individual, like cultural and socially. We're partnering on a number of things, but we're not amalgamated yet. So for now, this is what we're going to be using for economic development and marketing. If in the future it's used for other purposes, that's fine. We met with the chamber and they loved it, and they would consider even using it for their own purposes. So it'd be awesome. It's just that much more recognizability, that much more consistency and streamlining. But that's, at this point, that's not our goal. That's not our intent.
And I think that can come. It would be great to have one thing for everything, not just, for our schools, for our hospitals, just for so many things that just a bigger picture of our region. Other questions? Any other feedback? Oh, Lionel wants the weed identified.
Oh.
It's muted and it's at daybreak. It's not Todd's time of the day, so,
It's more of a sunset than a sunrise.
Yeah, down you go.
So in the report it said that you did a presentation to other communities except the county, and there was one other one.
You're our last.
You're
We're
last.
saving the best for last.
Excellent. And the others were all okay with it? They liked it?
Yeah, very receptive. Yeah. We presented to some economic development stakeholders as well. So we haven't met with Palliser Economic Partnership because their ED is just on holidays. But we met with Community Futures and Economic Development and Trade, the DRZ,
Southeast Alberta Economic Development Alliance.
Short names.
Yeah, and all of our local stakeholders as well. And then we went to each council. So.
Yeah, it's just this presentation is just meant to be kind of a progress update on where we are, what we're looking at, so that when things are launched, you're not completely caught off guard. So, but Tracy has been sitting on Councillor Fife has been sitting on our project leadership group and helping give direction. So.
No further questions? Great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for having us.
It's nice to finally have something, right?
Yeah, it's been a long process.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you so much, ladies. Enjoy the rest of your day. Todd, you're next. We're right back onto the agenda schedule. It's quite incredible. Ag Fieldman's report. We're at item 7.1.
Perfect. Thanks for having me today. Just thought I would give this formal report for you. So roadside spraying, as you remember, we were spraying the north side of the number 1, and we finished the bulk of the roads on Monday. Did a little tidying up on Tuesday, and we're just waiting for the Volker-Steven contractors to finish mowing, and then we'll clear up the spraying that they have us doing as well. So then we'll be completed, so that'll be good. Our weed inspecting and spraying in the urban partners, with our urban municipal partners, I think we've had some great results. Our spraying is effective, and weed inspecting found some new sites, new to us, I guess, and it never fails to amaze me what we find and where. So we did take some of our seasonal laborers, add them into the weed control mix. I quite enjoyed that part. It allows us to use the same resources that we have anyways and make our weed control a better program. We did take care of some tall buttercups, some baby's breath, some burdock, field bindweed, downy brome. That took up quite a bit of time, and we still have that one patch of leafy spurge that we fight. So little bits here and there. We did win some battles on the Bow River. Our scentless chamomile picking and spraying program has dwindled, which is awesome because that's the most labor-intensive part is the picking. So we're down to a few of the what we call river flats that have quite a bit, but otherwise everything's looking pretty green instead of white, which is positive. But then I guess we had a little bit of extra time and some money to do a little more work, so we started tackling some of the other ones that were down there, but not quite as high on our priority list. So some burdock, some toadflax, quite a bit of common tansy and black henbane, which came down through the last flood. And then the new one to us in the county as a whole and on Bow River was plumeless thistle. So that's a prohibited noxious weed. We knew it's been in wheatland for a while, so we've been watching for it, but it's a nasty one. We did cross from the south side to the north side with the roadside mowers. They're looking to be done in about 2.5 weeks. They should be right through everything. So that's exciting. Then we're trying to figure out how to move them back to Rolling Hills. We did have an incident where we started a fire by Castles, which was a shock because it wasn't as dry as we thought it would have to be to start a fire. So we're trying to figure out how we can make our sprayers be down in Rolling Hills and Scandia at the same time as we're mowing, so we can kind of have some protection that way. But realistically, we know we're just going down there for, that top 3 feet that still gets some weeds on it this time of year. So the grass isn't coming back as much as we would want it to. But so we're trying to figure that out. Hopefully we can come up with a solution. Rural Beautification Awards, that's next Friday, or the tour is. We're going to go out and do some judging, me and Brian and my friend Jean. So that's tomorrow. We're only looking at, I think, 6 yards, which is not a whole bunch, but it's more than 3, so that's positive. Our rental equipment, as you can see, it's been out, it's been working. I think we talked about this before, our drill rentals weren't as high as we'd like them to be, but considering we went from winter to summer in the same 2 weeks, we were not shocked by that at all. We couldn't get to everybody when they needed us. Emerson has been having a great year outside of some cell phone tower issues. I think everything else is kind of on par for income, and we're happy to hear some of the good reviews that we're getting. I think our Hamley crews, to be honest with you, might go back one more time in the south side because they're pretty dry, but the north side of the county still collected a little bit of moisture here and there. Other than that, we got some surveys and some noxious weed spraying coming up, and that's about it.
Questions for Todd? Clarence.
Do you ever do any of the secondary highways?
Mowing? No, not yet. They have a contract.
How much do I have to pay you to do 525?
The contractor didn't do the 525?
Oh, they do, but they won't do it again. I don't think. Anyway.
Yeah, I think, and I only know a very limited amount of information about their mowing program. I know they're supposed to have them mowed kind of the last week of June to the 3rd week of July is when they're supposed to mow all of their provincial highways for the first time. And then, providing we get moisture, they're supposed to come back. So they are working up towards Molly's area right now, but it's the contractor that they have, they just have a different style of mower, which takes them a little longer to mow than we do. They're doing about 2 miles an hour. We do about 4.5 miles an hour. So it just takes them a lot longer to get through things, that's all. But yeah, they likely won't come back to visit you.
Wow, it's dangerous. No, the sight lines, like right now on our secondaries, it's frightening at night, particularly just because it's tall growth. And what we notice is quite a difference between where the Wheatland-Newell border is. It's like, yeah. And if it's good, people say, wow, you sure can tell when you hit the Newell because everything's mowed, and I just go with it. It's nothing to do with us. Usually it's the opposite. But, yeah, it's interesting. Brian.
Well, and I was doing road tour yesterday, and we came down the 550, and they were mowing that right around Kessler's Corner there. They don't do the job you guys do either. there's a ridge in the middle, and I think like you said, it's the equipment, or I mean, you know more about it than me, but it's certainly when you've gotten used to seeing the job that your staff does and your equipment does, quite noticeable.
And really no fault to the contractor. The equipment that they're using, the manufacturer sold it to them under the impression that it would work. And they're not the only one that's having problems. There's another municipality up around Edmonton that bought 4 of the exact same mower, and they're experiencing the same problems. Really slow mowing, not the greatest job. And I don't need to get into it here, but you know, the mowers that we use have a larger gearbox, they have heavier blades, everything spins faster, they're just able to do a better job. That's why we've moved to those in the past, because they allow us to be very efficient.
Are those Degelmans?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the other brand that's being used? Is it green?
Really working around that.
I can ask, you know, we can do charades, it's okay.
No, I believe that the mowers that they're using are John Deere, yeah.
Anything else for Todd's report? Let's make, Wayne?
What do you use on milkweed to get rid of it?
We have really good success with a dicamba and a 2,4-D. It's relatively cheap, like a Banville, an Oracle, Divel DS, if you have that in your chem shed.
Yeah, I think I get a little Banville.
Yeah, most guys usually do, and it works really well.
I've noticed milkweed has really taken off this year.
Yeah, and you're not the only landowner that's called or asked about it too. They're noticing as well. And we've been relatively lax because most landowners have been really good about taking care of it in crop. And but we've even noticed on patches that we've sprayed for 20 years that the last 2 seasons have been more aggressive than they have in the last 10. So maybe just the weather conditions.
Maybe.
Lionel?
Well, Todd, I think you need to show off a little bit. You should take us for a 2 or 3 year equipment. I was very impressed. One of your sprayers was on our road here a while back, and I was very impressed by the way you set that up. Looks very good. I know we have never gone and seen it. This council hasn't. But I think that would be
look at the equipment,
yeah, well, if you appreciate equipment. Maybe you don't. I'm not sure, Molly, but
I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, Councillor.
You did, yes. I was very impressed, and I don't know. I think probably some of the other councillors may enjoy seeing it too.
See, I thought you were going to say we should go on a weed tour, because I was thinking, what's milkweed look like? And I wouldn't mind knowing about more weeds, but that sounds really good, Lionel. It really does.
Careful what you wish for. You go on a weed tour, the rest
2
of your
days
life.
and you end up in Montana.
The problem is no matter where you vacation in your life, you're going to notice the weeds, and it's just you'll be done.
I should go on a flower tour.
Yes.
Boy, oh boy, do we have an opportunity for you.
Been there, done that. I'm on my way to Manitoba. Too late, Todd.
I have so many comments that it's hard to. You guys are welcome anytime to come and see our equipment. And if you know me at all, I love to BS and show off. So yeah, we can go through. I can tell you guys why we built them, each individual one that way, because we built them all ourselves. So it's anytime you guys want to do that individually or together. And if you want to do a big weed tour, June is a better month because things are a little more green and more of the weeds are growing at that time. But I think we have a minibus. And we can just rock around the county. I'm sure I could point out a few here or there.
Also have a big...
Yeah, that too. I was thinking big pictures of milkweed. Ellen.
Todd, are you ever concerned about weeds becoming resistant to chemicals?
Absolutely, and it was probably right when you came on, Alan, we actually switched from using some of the same products we've been using for multiple years, and we went to a different chemistry. And so that's kind of how we were combating that a little bit. And we also, in almost all of our spray solutions, we use 2 modes of action. So we typically mix in a 2,4-D component just so that we get 2 ways of killing that plant. And then it limits how much resistance you can get. So yes, we certainly are.
Lionel, did you have something else?
Actually, Todd mentioned that I was going to give kudos because these guys built this equipment too.
And
not purchased. So.
And that makes it very special, Lionel, I know. Come on, you guys. I'm serious. Oh, it's after lunch. What can I say? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Let's have a motion to accept the Ag Fieldman's report. Ellen moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And let's talk about strychnine.
Yeah, so I tried to give you guys as much information as I could. I think everybody would know that strychnine's been kind of on the market, off the market over the last 20 years. PMRA and Health Canada are not real big fans of strychnine. It is an indiscriminate killer. It definitely has some potential for secondary poisonings, and that's part of the reason that they don't enjoy re-registering this product. Back in 2005 and again in like 2007 or 2008, we, as Ag Service Boards and the AAAF, we urged PMRA to re-register the product, and they did, and it took a lot of urging and letter writing, and we were involved in many of the trials that were cited in the document, trying out different products for their efficacy and time and those kinds of things. And really what boiled down to it was strychnine does have some potential issues, but we changed the label to limit those issues. And the other problem is the products that PMRA recommends to replace strychnine on the market are not as effective and time efficient as strychnine is. Multi-feed baits, if they're not used when there's snow on the ground and prior to green up, they are not as effective because we've talked about this before, but the gopher feels like a stomach ache and he just stops eating that product and moves on. Where strychnine, sometimes, it can take 1 kernel, and that's a lethal dose for a gopher, which is quite perfect. I learned a few things about strychnine that I did not know. Typically, when it gets into the bloodstream of a gopher and and that one's effectively controlled, it doesn't move beyond their stomach, the lethal part of the strychnine. So if there's a bird that's feeding on that poison gopher, even though they're not supposed to be, they would specifically have to eat the intestines of the gopher to get in contact with any strychnine. So I didn't know that. I've done actually a fair bit of reading, but that's beyond, I guess, what we're here to talk about today. So PMRA has made the decision that they want to take away the ground squirrel portion on the strychnine label, which would effectively take that out of our producers' hands to control Richardson ground squirrels or gophers. I don't believe that producers abuse strychnine. I believe they use it when they need it, and that's why we see an extended season for strychnine sales. We start selling strychnine as soon as gophers come out, and that's awesome. We applaud those guys every single year. But as you know, producers make purchasing decisions and control decisions based on an economic threshold. So 1 gopher on the outstretch of their field might not be enough for them to commit to coming to town, buying some strychnine, controlling that gopher. Now all of a sudden, it's June and they see, I got 20 gopher hills on the outside of my 1 wheat field, I have to do something. So that's why there's the difference in times of the year. We absolutely want people to use strychnine in the early spring because it limits how much has to go out there. But it's just not always on the radar. That's not when you see the gophers making damage in your field. So unless you've known there's a problem there before. I believe that shooting is a great option. I can tell you that I've spent countless hours doing it this spring, and I don't even make a dent. And I'm not a great shot, so let's just say half of mine work. I still don't even make a dent. So shooting is great when you have very small populations, not when you have large populations. We also have 600,000 acres of prairie, or 900,000 acres of prairie, something like that, that oftentimes goes unchecked because we don't control those areas. We have road ditches, EID ditches. There's so many areas that go unchecked for gopher populations that move into fields that then that producer has to control it. So strychnine is a great tool, and used appropriately according to the label, which I believe that all of our producers are doing. I think it's the only way to control a gopher population. So that's why I guess I'm here today to request that we do some targeted communication to the people that have purchased strychnine so that they can then contact PMRA and go through the process of explaining why they need strychnine. And I believe that we should, from an Ag Service Board level, be pushing to maintain strychnine registration as well.
Questions, comments? Brian?
Your thoughts on Rokon. Are you familiar with it, first of all, and your feelings on the product?
So when you say Rokon, you mean the foam?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we were at ASB last week. There was a presentation on the golf course, actually. One guy had a sponsorship, and we had a fieldman, an assistant fieldman on our team, and she echoed basically exactly what you said, Todd, and that was that strychnine is the best option early in the spring, but that Rokon later on, once the snow is gone and once there's other food sources available, it was a very good option. But that's one person, so I'm just curious whether you have any experience with it or your knowledge or background when it comes to the product, and maybe explain it a little bit to my colleagues here.
Certainly, and that is a great question. We actually built a Rokon applicator, which is essentially just a tank, a small pump, and an aerator nozzle on the end of a hose. So it's not a real difficult thing to build. So we can do a tour of that one, but it's not really difficult. I think that Rokon is a fantastic product in urban areas or populated areas. It is very time consuming and really labor intensive because you have to essentially set the cones in the holes you want to control. Then you have to fill all those holes up with your product. Then you have to wait for the gophers to consume the Rokon or breathe in the Rokon and asphyxiate. And you have to pull your cones, and then you have to go back. And when you're doing a large area, what will oftentimes happen is their exit holes are missed. So you'll be doing a great job of filling the hole, and then all of a sudden a family of gopher runs out, and they go to the next holes and the next holes. That's what we experienced. We did it at the old Tilly landfill when we first built it, and we also have used it at the Lake Newell Resort. And same thing. It's a great product, but it's very time consuming, and you have to do it exactly right. And you would need 1,000 cones to plug all the holes. But yeah, I know Eric and Jeff really well, and we've worked with them buying it because they're our supplier of Rokon as well. So it is, yeah.
That's one of the features of that. When you talk about strychnine and the possibility that we might not get it relicensed. I mean, I hope we do too. But I think we have to be aware of other options, even though they might be, a little bit labor intensive or not what we want, right? It might not be we need to have something else, right?
Well, absolutely. And when Rokon first came out, if you remember, this is probably 10 or 12 years ago, it was called Exit. It was called Exit Foam. And it was pushed largely in Calgary. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great control method, but it's just quite a bit more labor intensive than the other options.
Other questions? So, Todd, you have two options, or not really two, I mean, there are two, but I think our producers would want us to go with option 2 to continue the use of it, sale of it. And so we can obviously write letters, or I mean from the County of Newell we'll write a letter, but as well we need to get our producers involved in a letter writing. Yeah. Is that something we can do through our social media as well as, yeah, okay.
In my head, I see, because we take all of everybody's information when they purchase Strychnine, because it's an accounts receivable thing. We can do very targeted mail out to everybody that's purchased Strychnine, and we can probably go back quite a few years. I think the social media thing is great. I know I've seen a few other municipalities that have done that already, and maybe I think it would be great if we had some sort of overarching communication from the county to, our MPs or MLAs, those kind of guys.
Absolutely. And in the information that the letters would contain for the people that have used it, because those are the people that stand the most to lose, obviously. It would be all the information they need to put together a letter. Okay. Anne-Marie? Anne-Marie then will make a motion for option 2 in the RFD. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So, what are the timelines on this, Todd?
The exact date, I don't. I think it's September 28th. For some reason, that sticks out in my head. So it's a little bit of ways yet, but
summer.
Yeah.
They always do this stuff in summer. Yeah.
And I tore apart their proposal pretty hard. There's just a lot of assumptions made and words like probable and possible, and it was just whatever. But I tore it apart pretty good. Just in case you guys had questions.
No, I think we've been down this road before. Is this worse than anything ever we've had to argue about with them?
No, it's almost the exact same thing as what happened in 2005, and then we put in for an emergency use registration, and we had that for 3 or 4 years, and then that's when it, I shouldn't say that's exactly when it came to the county, but it was very shortly after. We were selling the ready-to-use wet product that we were buying from Coaldale, so I can't remember who it was in Coaldale. They would purchase the concentrate, mix it on the oats, and then we would buy it by the 5-gallon bucket or the 3-gallon bucket. I think before that, actually, we mixed it for the producers, but anyways, that was before my time. And then the problem with that is it was too long. By the time you mixed it in Coaldale, we went and picked it up. The farmer came and got it. Oftentimes, that bait wasn't as attractive to the ground squirrels. So mixing it the way we do it now, we sell 1 bottle of 2% liquid strychnine. It goes on one ice cream bucket of oats, and it's put out immediately, right? So your bait is always fresh and attractive. So worst case scenario, I guess, if they really take it away, then we have to go through the process of an emergency use registration again, prove that we have an infestation outbreak, and go from there.
So would this be all across the prairie? This will be an issue. So, yeah. No, that sounds good. Okay, Todd, anything else then for you? All good? Thank you. All right, we will go to item 8.5, I think, Foothills Little Bow. And I'm assuming that's just information about it for our calendars. Too late for resolutions, I hope. Item 8.6, public participation and communication policy. Wayne?
So this one is brought forward is from the last, it was a month ago now when we
had discussion on this, felt it was appropriate for the opportunity to be provided for the public to comment on the policy. We have certainly made information available regarding the proposed policy. We have received no feedback from the public on this one. I think that unless council wants to make some further changes, you're certainly in a position to go ahead and proceed with approval of the policy. Just by way of background information, within the policy itself, we've outlined the type of, or the instances when the policy would be enacted. It's when major changes are being considered to either policy, to programs, fees, taxation, things that are going to have an impact on the residents, potential impact on the residents of the county. Just looking at today's agenda, the policies that finance brought forward, those are really internal matters, and they wouldn't be something that would be subject to the policy kicking in. But a couple of other things that were on the agenda, if this policy had been in effect and we were abiding by it, would have been the conversation that has taken place regarding cannabis and whether or not there needs to be some additional regulations put around the consumption of cannabis and the sale of cannabis in the community. So really the whole intent is that it provides the organization, provides council with some guidelines as to when it's appropriate to go out to the public, receive feedback before final decisions are made on things that would have an impact on the public. Given the fact that you're under a fairly tight timeline, July 23rd is the legislative deadline for having a policy in place, and we would ask the council approve it unless you want to have some further changes made. If that's the case, we need to know what those are.
I think we can get a motion on that today. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie will recommend option 1, approve policy 2018 PLF 019 as submitted. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Lane, for your work on that. Councillor payment sheets.
We were a little tight on schedule, but I did send the corrections to everybody by email. I don't think it made it into our agenda.
Any questions? Motion? Brian moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Payment register. Questions regarding the payments? Clarence. What company?
It's Hagerman, H-A-G-E. And it's $49, but I just thought it was, I don't know.
H or A? H. Hello. Yeah, okay. Whistles. So when the tree's coming down, they don't yell timber anymore. They whistle. 49.64. Maybe Jeff knows. Here's a question for you. What's a whistle for tree cutting? A whistle for tree cutting. I think that's what they're for, Clarence.
Well, where's my whistle? The tree's coming down.
It's around your neck, Clarence. We're looking at the check register that was paid to Hagemeyer, Canada, $49.64 whistles for tree cutting. I know Kevin or Lane can find out for sure, but in the meantime, it's sort of fun to make up stuff. But I went with you. Any other questions that we can later get answers for? If not, we move.
I wouldn't spend too much time.
Oh, it's a good question. Is that, you're going to move it, Clarence? Awesome. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any requests for functions of council upcoming? All right, we'll move right on to item number 9. That's why Jeff would be here. Welcome, Jeff.
Good afternoon, everybody. Here today with a request for some additional funding for gravel crush we performed last month at the Steveville pit. This on May 17th, 2018, County Council approved the award of the crushing of 140,000 cubic meters of 1 inch and inch and a half aggregate to Sage Management Limited for their tendered prices. So just a few background things on this request for additional funding. At the Steveville pit, an independent arbitrator a number of years ago came up with a document and an order to the county kind of regulating when and how we must and can crush in the Steveville pit. Crushing can only take place in the calendar month of June. It can happen 24 hours a day. The crusher must be placed below grade for visibility from residences on the north side of the river, and there are a few other minor requirements for that. So we found out about this, not this crush, but the past crush when we weren't aware of it, and we decided we'd crush in July. It came to light pretty quick, so we were making sure we were on board with this crush and making sure we were appeasing all the terms of that. So that being said, we had Sage Management crushing out in the Steveville pit. In the package here in my RFD, you'll notice a pit plan that was sent out with the tender. The area in red bold was the actual area identified to be mined out. That area we identified was 165,000 cubic meters of raw material to be crushed out and produce 140,000 cubic meters of usable road crushed gravel. We add about 10 to 15% on what we identified to be crushed out for the simple fact that we don't always run into perfect crushing material. There's rejects, there's sands, there's clay, there's water pockets, and everything else. So we again go forward and advertise it like this and request 140,000 cubic meters. So the last week of June, they were getting close to their tonnage on their belts, and they had we went out and we met with them, and in the very southwest corner there was an area that was still raw material that hadn't been crushed in the area that we designated. Not saying that we needed them to crush it, but for a few reasons we did want it crushed out. This area was identified as it's the furthest west boundary of our pit, basically, and what our goal was with this crush was to crush down to the existing floor in preparation that we could go in next spring and do some bell holes and some test pits to see how much gravel's left at that floor level on the west end of the pit. So direction was given at that time after some discussions when they thought they were close. The piles hadn't been volumed yet. We estimated if they were going to finish off and crush that out, they'd be about 10,000 cubes over the tendered value. So we gave them direction to go ahead and clean up that final corner. Again, because it was the last week of June and we needed to do it in the month of June, we pressed them forward doing that. Just recently we've came and we've got final quantities, and if you look further down in the RFD, you'll see that in the tender had requested 120,000 cubic meters of 1 inch road crush to be crushed, where we crushed 130,437, which is about 10,437 cubic meters over, and we requested 20,000 meters of inch and a half to be crushed, where they crushed an additional 6,072 to clean up that last end of the pit there. So The difference in the cubic meters is just about 16,500 at $8.21 a cubic meter. Our budget number is short about $135,540. Some of the reasons, again, like I say, why we weren't able to approach council prior to this happening was the time constraint for crushing. It was after the second meeting in June when this came to our attention, and we could only crush till the end of June. We did, again, like I say, wanted to get to that pit floor on the west end, and if that does end up being the actual pit floor, that's again great for our operations, because during our next crush we can move some of the overburden material and direct place it to reclaim that end of the pit, as opposed to lifting it up, setting it in a pile, and pulling it back across the pit once we've completed the crushing activities. So there's a number of reasons why we did move forward with it, again, prior to addressing council. And we did save mobilization for this crush. They crushed at the same price with no additional mobilization costs, which they shouldn't have anyways. And yeah, that's about it. If there's any questions, I'm prepared to field those.
Remind me why we have time constraints.
The time constraints come from a document that I don't have in front of me, but it was a landowner on the north side of the river. I believe it was in the early 2000s, was upset with the crushing of gravel at the pit. Noise, dust, negative visibility issues, and I'm not sure how it came to go to an independent arbitrator, but the arbitrator made the decision that the county would only crush in the calendar month of June, would place the crusher below grades and out of sight, and again a few other minor restrictions on our crushing on that parcel. So again, like I say, when we crushed there in I believe 2015, we weren't aware of this, and we crushed in July, but it soon became apparent once they started the belts up that the phone calls started to come, and we found the document quite quickly. So that's how it came to be.
Emery, apparently it echoes in that valley. And his house, he passed away, his house was on the north side, and yeah, it does echo in there. And there were some oil companies that had trouble with the same man, and they built a wall from straw around their oil activity to cut down on the noise. Is it for perpetuity? Does it go on forever till the pit is done?
I would have to follow that up to be sure. I couldn't see any ending clause in it when I read through it last.
Clarence?
Are there still people living there?
It is still occupied, and a few more structures have gone up across the river there as well.
All right, just getting a little bit off topic here, but Wayne. Okay, Wayne has made the motion to approve the additional money, which would appear to might possibly retrieve some of it back in efficiencies going forward from the sounds of things, which is always good. Any other comments? Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mark, or I should say Jeff. I'm glad that you feel that it's okay to make a decision like that is good for us all without... there are times where it's better to, what's the word? Beg forgiveness and ask permission. But that's because there was timeline issues, and so it's good. I mean, it's good to know that we'll support you with those. Okay, Mark is here today because we have a special lunch next council meeting.
So
Gosh, we're going to get fed. No, it's not the next meeting, is it?
No, it's in between.
Yeah, right. Okay. It's
in between. So July 26th, the RMA, formerly the AAMD&C, they have reached out to us as they've been working their way through the RMA members to host appreciation barbecues with the various members throughout Alberta, which should just about be all of us. And so they want to come to Newell. And I said, sure. So they are planning to be here next Thursday. It's just going to be a informal kind of barbecue kind of thing like that. What was suggested at the same time, since we are 4.5 hours from Edmonton, pending how fast you drive, suggested that if there's anything that any staff member or council member would like to meet with any of their specific representatives on for services, programs, things that RMA offers to its members, that we could take the time while they are here, providing us with sure it's going to be a delicious lunch and good camaraderie and stuff like that, that we'd be able to schedule some meetings with whoever is representing such areas of interest by anyone. So I thought I would throw that out to council. I do not expect to see anybody from the RMA board of directors or anything like that, or their chair or president, whichever terminology goes by, but their staff will definitely be here. So people that you've probably heard from, like Dwayne Gladden, who is in charge of the trade division and those sorts of things. He may or may not be here, but he will definitely have more of the heads of areas here if anybody chooses to.
So Mark, it's more of like geared toward their sales and stuff as opposed to governance. Like
sales and their trade division stuff is the RMA benefits program, energy program, which we're part of right now. Lane got us through that. They have a cellular program, contract purchasing stuff, the tire program that we have for fleet and equipment and stuff. But they do have the insurance and the fuel sides of things. If there's anything that council would like to take interest in the fuel or insurance or anything of that, but they've invited all of us at Newell to come to the barbecue. So
at 12?
At 12, yes.
And will it be outside if it's nice?
Hoping so. Said the courtyard's there. We need to get some use out of it, so let's get things set up and have a good time anyway. And meetings might take place in the mornings in some cases and some in the afternoon. I know Stephanie has asked time for insurance and risk management meeting, and then Roberta was looking into IT services and stuff, so the cellular side of things that we haven't leveraged through them at this time.
So council, is there anything that interests you? Like, I think it's more staff related myself, but as far as the meetings go, for sure. And for council, did you want to make this a function of council? Yeah. Function of council.
It sounds like it's for staff mostly, so why would it be a function of council?
Well, we're invited, correct? Like, it's not just for staff.
Everyone at Newell is invited, as the municipality is a member of the RMA.
Could we, is it possible to get any information on amalgamation? Just step by step. Because
like, I don't think this is part of this side.
This is just a trade thing?
This is their big, you called it trade division, right? And all the different
their trade division will be
do.
represented here, yeah.
It's the things they do for municipalities beyond counseling type things. But it's part of our Rural Municipal Association, so. And I think we should make it a function of council. They are part of we are part of their association. And I think it'd be good to have a few people show up. Is that a motion you made, Clarence? Clarence will make it as a function of council for the 26th. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we don't need to let anybody know. It's just they're going to have lots of food and. Okay. Anything else, guys?
If I could ask a few more minutes of council, something else, I haven't been able to bring this up with CAO Stevenson. As council somewhat aware, we've been working with Alberta Transportation in the hamlet of Tilly with the Highway 876 overlay. We did reach an agreement with them last fall for a cost share arrangement to replace some of the sidewalks where we had drainage problems and stuff prior to them doing the asphalt work. With that, County Newell Municipal Services and other administration staff have heard from members of the public, whether it be at the Hamlet advisory meetings or just logged complaints in passing and whatnot, that 2nd Avenue and Highway 876 road crossing for some of the school students and the public is, I guess the locals would consider it a high-risk intersection. Currently there is angle parking in front of the hotel, angle parking in front of the store, and down those portions of commercial area towards the south end on Highway 876. And therefore, when children and pedestrians have to step out from the sidewalk to get into the intersection, there's nothing there that's a barrier or something visible that they can stand on and physically check to see if any motorists are oncoming. The second component to it is a number of reports have come in and complaints saying that people don't stop at the four-way stop at that intersection. There is a red light that overhangs that intersection and flashes for northbound, southbound traffic. I believe it flashes for east and west as well. And then the stop signs are actually mounted on old tire rims. And whenever people remember to, they pull them out to the middle, which would be Volker Steven, or sometimes we've been asked to move those stop signs, and other times for operations purposes of snow removal and stuff, Volker and or the county will push them off to the side, and then it's a matter of who remembers to move them back to the center of the roadway. And with that being known, we iterated, or we at least voiced the concerns of the Tilly residents to Alberta Transportation when they were looking at the design of this road to give this some consideration and how they can mitigate the risk and safety for pedestrians in the area. So July 17th, just 2 days ago, we got an email from Alberta Transportation staff saying that the consultant had got back to Alberta Transportation to be able to put bulbs at the intersection or elephant ears, depending what area of work you've been in before, if you understand that, but basically projecting the concrete out into the intersection a little bit to make that more visible. And they're emailing to gauge the interest of the county to cost share the work 60-40, the same as the sidewalks have been done. The estimate right now is $80,000. So I would like to ask council if we are interested in partnering with them to improve the safety of the residents in the village or in the hamlet of Tilly, whereas most likely 50% of the school-age students living in the hamlet have to cross that intersection to get to the east side where the school is currently located. The thing that I'm discouraged with right now is that transportation is just now coming to the table with us on even addressing the situation, which was addressed about 8 to 10 months ago.
So it's sort of hard to say no when you put all this safety stuff, the way you phrase that, Mark. But is it 80,000 each or 40,000?
No, it would be, we would be on the hook for 40% of the 80, $32,000 approximately. One other concern that we have with this is some of the concrete work that's already been done, that we've already been put on the hook to pay for, will have to be removed in order to facilitate this. So in council's consideration of this work, I'd be seeking the direction from council as to how they would like to proceed, if we're going to proceed in any manner whatsoever.
So stuff that's happened in this go-round that would already have to be changed?
Removed.
Yay, government. Wayne.
I don't see how anybody can approach that intersection and not stop. It's well, I mean, it stands out, but I would say we have to pay the money to make this a safe intersection. So
Just to clarify too, this is still an Alberta Transportation Highway with Alberta Transportation traffic and traffic controls in place. To iterate what Mark said too, we did approach Alberta Transportation before this project was tendered to discuss the stop or the crosswalk and the visibility of the stop signs. I think the main issue is again, motorists not stopping the north-south is when those stop signs are pushed back against the curb, behind the trees that are blossomed out, behind the cars that are parked, and everything else. Yes, that overhead light is there. So are people not stopping, being complacent, or are they new to the community? Probably not. They probably know it's a stop condition. However, sometimes choose not to follow it.
Anne-Marie.
I'm a little bit confused about Alberta Transportation because if we look at the 544 where we have a school, Alberta Transportation made a decision on their own to put up signs and then change the signs, and now you have 70-30. We had no input in that. We didn't have to pay for that. So why are they expecting us to pay for this one?
I think they're just trying to gauge whether we're a willing partner in sharing some of the expense where they may have had some oversights, but I can't really speak to much of that.
So do you get the feeling that they'll go ahead and do this anyhow?
I think there was a lot of reluctance in the beginning because I'm not sure that traffic or pedestrian traffic actually warrants it based on some of their surveys and initial findings, and I think that's when we start talking about statistics and things involved in things, that rural areas have very low numbers compared to more of those high populated urban areas. And that's where we often get into some of those challenges and difficulties with how we go about on a statistical basis versus common sense approach, I would suggest.
So with this new paving right there, like can't these stop signs be put in a different spot permanently? Impossible?
With the current arrangement, no. There's the parking lane beside the driving lane. Without some redesign, which is what I'd hoped was going to happen before the tender phase, or at least before the construction started. I mean, there's a number of options that could be done. And I was hoping we'd look at something, a possible concrete island in the center median between the north-south where the stop sign could be installed permanently. But this bulbing option was just, again, like Mark said, presented 2 days ago to us.
Clarence.
Explain to me this bulbing option and why we have to remove sidewalk to do it.
So the sidewalk that is already poured based on the original plan will now need to be cut out and formed. So if you know how the concrete and brickwork is in front of the city of Brooks and across the city of Brooks, to get those areas so that people are standing more out where traffic can see them and they can see traffic, that is what the objective of this would be on Main Street Tilly at the 2nd Avenue intersection.
It's really not a huge amount of work. It's just ridiculous that it has to be done after the fact, pretty much. And the other thing is that it's our hamlet, but not our road.
Right.
Jeff.
Just as a refresher, as for the initial curb and gutter that we're partnering on, a lot of this was identified when we were doing our upgrades in the hamlet of Tilly, on the east side of the road, southeast side of the road, where the old village office was, where Grey Graphics is, where the Chinese food restaurant is. Issues were brought up with the curb and gutter and the sidewalk not being sloped away from the buildings, water jumping the curb, and it was decided, because we knew transportation was coming through, that we would engage them about doing that work as part of their overlay project. When transportation came back, they said yes, they were willing to do it and even partner on it. So that's where this whole cost sharing for the curb and gutter and sidewalk down Center Street and Tilly came from initially.
So it's not too outrageous to think that this is, I mean, you sort of were doing it, but this is just an after the fact as well. Gotcha. Okay, folks. So we're looking at about a $32,000 fix to save the lives of the people crossing the street. And tell you guys, is there any question in your mind?
So your average vehicle height is 3.5 feet, 4 feet? So how tall do you have to be before they can see you? And what are we adding, 6 inches?
Not just 6 inches, but you're at least giving school-aged children the opportunity to get out towards the back of vehicles and see what may be oncoming or not before they're actually put into risk in any way with turning movements or whatnot. So think of your grade 1 students, grade 2 students, grade 3s. We heard the presentation from them before about excessive idling in the community and stuff, which we supported, and based on how they're smaller and near exhaust pipes and stuff.
Okay, you guys. Brian.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. The fact that they've been a partner with us on this probably is the only reason that I'm making this motion, but again, I reiterate the same thing that has been talked around the table. When you're doing stuff, why do we have to go back and do it again? But that being said, it's a safety issue, and I don't think we have a choice. So I'll make this motion to support this.
And the fact that we're doing it again is not our liability or fault. Yeah. Any further discussion? Alan?
Just one question that came to mind. What if the vehicles are not parked that way, but just, I know Rosemary did that, they changed it, and you have to park now a different way because of security?
To do parallel parking versus angle parking? I don't know how many, I'm not sure how many parking stalls you would have on the store side. You probably have 3, maybe 4 versus probably 10 or 12. I don't know how busy that is on the best of days because I'm not through there frequent enough, but there's generally 1 to 2 vehicles at the store more often than not. I do know that some of them park along 2nd Avenue on the side of the store as well. I believe there's a bit of a secondary business that operates out of the hotel as well, that has some of the larger 2-ton trucks and stuff parked in front of it sometimes. And then currently we're still, I think the matter is resolved with the cattle liner being parked on the other side of the street, parallel parking there. I think that one's been cleaned up, but there is definitely parking opportunities on the east side of the road versus the west, I'd say.
But you wouldn't see that as a solution.
I don't know what the local community would say to changing the parking arrangement there. I've never gathered that feedback from anybody there at this time.
Jeff?
The other pro to bulbing it out, or again, like I said, the option of putting the center island in the road will make the stop sign more visible too. It won't depend on manpower to drag it out to the middle of the road, to drag it back against the curb when they're doing sweeping, snow removal, so on and so forth. And you know, in my initial discussions with transportation, this was the biggest thing in the whole matter, was making motorists aware that it is a 4-way stop and actually stopping. We did have discussions about the installation of a full-blown crosswalk. Russ, in conjunction with transportation, conducted a traffic count, and the traffic and pedestrian movements didn't warrant a full-blown crosswalk installed at that location. So we moved on to discussions about a better arrangement of the stop signs, of the pedestrian visibility, of everything surrounding the safety of people crossing there. So again, just a little more background.
Okay. All right. Brian has put forth the motion to proceed with this. Any further discussion? Clarence.
getting out of the infrastructure fund.
Yes, if there's going to be a motion made that to support the request for additional funding in partnership with Alberta Transportation for the $32,000 funded through the infrastructure fund is how I would ask that be worded.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, and my apologies that something wasn't more down on paper and in front of you today prior to the meeting. So.
It's not your fault. No reason to apologize. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we're going to go on to committee reports. Anne-Marie has a number in our package. Mill Regional Services Corporation. That was
me, I guess.
Clarence?
Just a quick update on how Newell Regional Services is doing. Half of the year gone. Our revenue at this point in time is, as far as budget is concerned, is 49%, which is probably about right because the heavy summer months aren't there yet. Our expenditures are only at 44.8%, so our expenditures are down from what was budgeted, and we think they'll probably stay down unless we have something unexpected. And up to this point in time, we've got a profit of $557,000. So $500,000, which is really good to see. Water consumption is up. Had a tremendous May and a little lower in June, and on Tuesday we had the second highest day of production that we've had since 2017. I guess we had our highest day. So anyway, it was a hot day, and we think we'll probably continue on at that pace for the rest of the year. So things are looking good. Everything's working well. We did have a personnel change, which I can't really get into, but it's being handled. We're again looking for an entry-level operator. The one that was left was our plant operator. Anyway, that is all under control, and things are good.
Thanks,
Brian
Clarence.
might want to add some more.
Good. Looks like it's been a quiet month for everybody. O'Brien, ASB tour.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that Anne-Marie, she did a good job, but I had a couple others that I wanted to mention, and I'd ask the other people that went if they wanted to add any comments too. Some of the things that jump out at you, of course, Strathcona County is very well populated, but it has a huge assessment too. They have a $300 million operating budget and a $70 million capital budget, annual capital budget. About 20, but with that, so they're big, but they have no water project. They have no regional water there. And they looked at it and said, well, we just can't afford it. So the councillors from County of Newell looked at each other, and I think we sort of smiled and said, good on us. And so another part of the budgets that jump out, they spend $35 million just on their fire and EMS. They get about $9 million of that back from Alberta Health, but some pretty impressive equipment, but it always comes with a price tag. $20 billion in projects either underway or being proposed for that heartland area up in the northern part of their county. And we also visited the one that Anne-Marie hadn't put on her list was I think it was Scottsville Hydrite Colony. Yeah, and
as most colonies that we've seen, they pretty impressive when you see the technology that they've put together. The other thing that I was really impressed by was the school that Anne Marie mentioned, and I just wanted to talk about that a little more. We had an opportunity to go through the teacher that teaches the horticulture program, and really it was evolved out of students that perhaps didn't have a big academic background or weren't maybe motivated in that area. And but the interesting thing is, so the school comes up with the capital for the greenhouse and the operations, but they have to budget for it, and they have to provide the operating. So they grow 1,300 poinsettias and then sell them, and then take that money and they reinvest it, and if they need stuff in there, and then they turn that right around and do bedding plants for the spring, and the students are responsible for coming up with the timetables for selling it, whether it's off hours and Saturdays and different things. So they really have to take full responsibility for what they are. I mean, they get all the support from parents and teachers and that, but I thought it was pretty impressive that their expectation is that they break even when it comes to the operating part of it. And so I thought, that's a great way to run. And they had some outdoor stuff that they were working on too, and very innovative. And I think that whole school is set up that way, because just sitting in their sort of gathering area, you looked around, and their arts program, the number of billboards they had up of all the plays and theater performances they did was amazing. Like it was I counted 40 different plays that they've done over, and I don't know how long a period that is, but it was everything from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to Shakespeare to, you name it. So it was pretty cool. The only question, or a question that I had for my colleagues, and this goes to the specialized municipality, the ones that attended, what your feelings were, because it got asked a lot of times. Like probably there was a lot of curiosity from councillors about how the specialized municipality worked, and that rural versus urban. It came up, we were 2 days on a bus, and I heard it at least 3 times a day. And anyway, so I'm curious my colleagues, because it really was, I thought the answer was, for me, refreshing, but maybe you guys can comment on that.
Just a minute. Things are falling apart. Interesting, you should ask that. I wanted to add, for that school, there was also a beauty component to it. So there was just an array of different opportunities. Yeah, I thought it was a mixed opinions. We had a lady on, I think she was the land purchaser for Strathcona County, and I thought her opinion was that it worked all fine, urban and rural. Although, then I heard from the other side, a councillor from the north, that it was the biggest mistake they'd made since, 96? So a bit of a different opinions there. And I did notice that there's 5 urban wards and 3 rural. So it is a bit of a difference there.
No, that's not quite correct. But I like to hear why this councillor thought it was the biggest mistake, because I only heard positive things too. So
that's interesting, but that's what I understand. That of course, because the urbans have more than the rural, that he's obviously also part of his county has the industrial heartland portion in the county, and just for rural decisions, he thought that it was, again, his words, the biggest mistakes they made. So a bit of a difference in opinions of different people.
So we're talking 5 councillors? You said committees or something.
Well, there's 5 urban councillors, and there's 3, urban and 3 county. It's on their website.
8 councillors?
Yeah, there is 8 councillors. They do it by population, so it's roughly 12,000 with a little bit per councillor. There are some councillors that are mix of urban and rural. Sherwood Park is 60,000 people, so they're going to somewhere along the line have a little bit more representation, but part of Sherwood Park is also, 2 of those councillors are also in the rural area. So it certainly from the councillor that was on our tour, the second thing, and if he was from Sherwood Park, mentioned that there was really not much talk about urban and rural. I don't know, I didn't hear any negatives either. They have never had the opportunity of really having that because it's always been that way.
That was my next question. How did it happen?
Right, it didn't happen, it was there. And I don't know, Emery, you said that Sherwood Park was still a hamlet, but I thought they said it wasn't a hamlet anymore.
Yeah, it's specialized.
It's a special part of the special municipality.
Yeah, I think what I meant is that they don't have their own council.
Right.
Yeah. No.
So I don't know, I mean, if you think of 100,000 people and 8 councillors, that's kind of interesting.
And they're elected from any part of the area, they just chunk it, 12,000 people per ward or whatever, approximately. And you have to live in that ward. Tracy?
Yeah, the population difference was very, very small because we were asking about that. And
the what is?
The population difference between wards was it was pretty consistent across. And they didn't really, what I heard, they didn't even really distinguish a difference per se between urban and rural. It was just those were the people they represented, and it worked well, and it was good, yeah. So, yeah.
Brian?
Yeah, and I'll just, I guess that's what I heard too, and you know, it was interesting because the guy that was on our bus the second day, his name was Glenn, I forget his last name, but he was from South Cooking Lake, so pretty rural. And he's been a councillor for 5 terms, and he said, we just never get into it. He says, it comes up, he says, but we just never go there. He says, and it never becomes an issue because we never go there. So, I mean, I'm not disputing what Alan heard because I didn't talk to the councillor from the north end, but I certainly got the impression that you just don't make it an issue, and it isn't an issue. And it isn't an issue around their table. They say, actually, because of the population, they feel that the rurals are treated, you know, if you really wanted to look at it, the rurals are treated really well because they know they're a minority, but they look out for them. So, and they never look at the rural versus urban. It's just everybody's together.
So what's their total population?
It's just under 100,000. It's 98.
And 60,000 live in.
Yeah.
Sherwood Park.
Yeah, and Sherwood Park is filled. They have no more room left in Sherwood Park, so they're jumping across the highway, sort of kitty corner, and they've bought already 250 acres of land, like the municipality has, and they're starting to plan this development. They're already a year or two into this planning of this development that will be the next recreational area for that area, that, you know, so the area in Strathcona County can continue to evolve. So,
Tracy,
I think that was the one thing that was totally amazing to me was their recreation facilities. Like, I don't know how many we've seen over the course of those 2 days, but huge, like unbelievable. Like you could fit probably 2 of our JVS Canada centers into their one where they had their main greeting. Like, it was just phenomenal. The recreation was huge there. Like, unbelievable. It was just wow.
And what they, as a municipality, pay for the capital structure. And volunteers run the building.
Wow. Like even in Sherwood Park.
Supposedly. Well, our volunteers or the operating people have to take. They pay some people, but it makes some money. So that's the local people have to make sure that the operating pays their way.
Interesting.
It's probably a mistake to say volunteers.
Yeah. The local people pay for the operating through their taxes or whatever, or user fees, or Interesting. And they've just always been that way. It was a special municipality, specialized.
What was interesting about it is he said when they went to the municipal government, he said you really can set it up any way you want. So your tax rates can be different in different areas, and because in our mind, we're sort of thinking, well, like we currently have non-res and res, it's all, if you live in the county of Newell, you pay one tax rate if you're in that category. And he said you're allowed to do pretty much, I shouldn't say whatever you want, but you have a lot of flexibility when you come to municipal affairs. And in order to determine that level of service that area is going to provide, and perhaps the tax rate should be reflective of that. So, that was very eye-opening to, we've stepped our toe in this area, so to speak, and it's good to get that input from a municipality that's been there for 40 years, right?
Good. Sounds like an interesting learning time.
And there was no difference in residential between urban and rural. So I asked, is there different tax rates for level of service, and there wasn't, which is just amazing to me. But they did it because their utilities were all charged separately. So if you had water, you had a water charge. If you had sewer, you had a sewer charge.
So there's user fees for the service.
So it's yes and no. It isn't the same, but it's not a blanket.
Interesting. Anything else on tour? All right. Snow Joint Services meeting in August. I see it's just on our agenda always, and I missed the last meeting, so I don't have anything to report, obviously. Anne-Marie? You're done with the committee?
Yeah, go ahead. Because I have a question. Ellen, you sent an email around just half an hour ago, and I had a question about the money that you write. 42,000 from Brooks hadn't come in yet. Do you know if it eventually was paid?
It wasn't sure at the meeting, and she thought perhaps she misplaced the check, but she said she usually doesn't, so they're going to recheck on that.
This is your staff member?
Indeed.
Oh, okay. Well, next question is, you made a payment to Food Truck Wednesday. What is that?
A new venture, apparently really successful. It's the food trucks get together in Brooks, in the downtown, and they have music and they have programs for the children, and then you can go out, take your kids, and have some food. And apparently the outcome is amazing. It really went over well. Yeah, so it's a new event this summer.
He was asking where it was held.
It's right in downtown in the, what is it called there, at the end of the road? Veterans Park, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with meeting reports? I think I talked about the summer games actually last meeting, or on Monday perhaps. So I really don't have much excitement in this month. Okay, post-agenda items. We'll just go through the information items before we
Moving camera. There is the August 9th barbecue. Kevin, did you want to mention that?
Thanks, Madam Reeve. Yeah, so we selected August 9th from the last joint service meeting, I think, for the potential. Council confirmed it at the last meeting, so we sent a notification out through the city to let them know that we would host. So we're thinking 4 p.m. If the day's decent and not too hot, we could maybe be out in our patio area there, or if it isn't, we can be inside, because I think there's about 40 or so members that potentially could show up if everybody comes. So just wondering about meal, what are we looking, burgers, coffee, that kind of stuff.
It's at 4 p.m. It's called Beer and Burgers.
Okay.
You were asking us what the menu is?
That's Doug Griffiths' term.
Yes, I agree. That's what he refers to every social get-together with beer and burgers. But people have feedback. You want lobster, you said, Wayne? Lobster and champagne?
I like the beer and burgers, just casual. Don't spend too much money.
So do we have to have somebody come in and do this, or are we just going to cook it ourselves? Or?
I think we'll ham up a couple staff members that's not a whole lot of burgers to fry up. So
No.
I think we can do that. Just a matter of the time, and if there's going to be an agenda or just informal. Or
I had 4 p.m. Is that what other people were thinking? We were thinking to show up about 4, and I was thinking informal, but maybe not. Do we need an agenda?
I just remember reading the summary of Doug Griffith, and I thought the idea was to keep it really casual. That was the idea, and don't have an agenda. That was my recollection.
Just let it unfold, but there will be a hidden agenda. I think, sounds like people are thinking casual beer and burgers, literally, and anything else that a couple of staff that you want to get involved with. And if you need help, Kevin, let us know. Okay? And we should be there to be the welcoming group, probably, since we are the hosts this time, so we should try to be there at 4. And that good, Ken? Yep. Oh yeah, we have a council meeting that day, so that's good. We'll have to aim for that for sure. I'll be up to the Reeve. It'll be all on my shoulders. So. Okay, question period. Notice of motion. Nothing. Let's move in camera, please. Anne-Marie moves us in camera at 2:24. All in favor? 2:34, yeah. I'm having trouble with time.